My cheating wife asked for an open marriage for herself, but I got revenge she never expected. I reclined in my chair, scanning the room and pondering the abundance of attractive women present. Why did Mark Lavalier opt for my wife? What made her agree, and why did she leave me, with our kids growing more independent and likely not returning home soon? Linda and I had already outlined our plans for when we would have the house to ourselves. Months back, I had entertained thoughts about the future dynamics between Linda and me, assuming we'd grow closer with increased quality time together. Then it dawned on me abruptly. Linda's vision of the future might not include me. I felt utterly foolish. That realization swept away all traces of sadness, leaving behind a simmering anger. I could sense the concern in the gazes around the table, as if they feared my head might explode or I might do something foolish. Dee, sounding anxious, inquired, "You all right, Jim?" On the far end of the dance floor, seated in a booth, were 4 striking young women, visible over Dee's shoulder. Why hadn't Mark Lavalier chosen one of them? I observed them briefly before bursting into laughter, startling everyone at the table. My laughter echoed so loudly that it drew attention to our group, tears streaming down my face. Once my laughter subsided, I wiped my tears and flashed a broad smile to everyone, realizing my life had undergone a profound change. I was no longer bound by monogamy. The concern for my wife's feelings vanished, as she no longer cared about mine. All eyes were fixed on me. Turning to Dee with a smile, I removed my wedding ring and handed it to her, leaving her astonished. "Pass this along to Linda when you see her. I have matters to attend to." Standing up, I tossed a $10 bill onto the table. "That's for my drink. Since you were so supportive of Linda's infidelity, you can cover it." As I walked away from the table, my former friends called out to me. From the club entrance, I pondered what I would say if they attempted to follow me. But one thing was clear. Any husband who disregarded my warning and pursued me would meet a broken nose. Lost in thought, I contemplated Linda's pursuit of selfish pleasure and my own intentions for self-indulgence. Upon reaching the hotel, I inquired about available full-size suites at the front desk. The clerk regretfully informed me of their unavailability but suggested a honeymoon suite instead, listing its numerous amenities. "I'll take it. There's no need to keep the room I'm currently in since it's late at night already. I'll cover the cost for both rooms. My wife will remain in the original room, while I'll be in the suite," I informed the young woman behind the desk. She gave me a puzzled look. "I briefly thought you were arranging something special for your wife," she remarked. After she handed me the key card for the suite and provided directions, I made a request. "If my wife inquires about the key to my room, please refrain from giving it to her. Actually, could you leave specific instructions not to disclose my whereabouts if she asks?" The young woman's expression turned curious, but she smiled nonetheless. "I'll ensure the hotel staff receives your instructions," she assured me. I returned to my previous room to gather my belongings, leaving Linda's items behind in the trash bins. Taking the elevator to the top floor, I marveled at the spacious honeymoon suite, complete with a jacuzzi on the expansive balcony with a city view. I had brought an expensive tuxedo along in case we decided to indulge in late-night drinks at one of the upscale nearby restaurants. Donning my jacket, I made my way back to the club, stopping by the At the Moment for some cash. Upon my return, a long line had formed at the entrance. Approaching the doorman confidently, I slipped him a $100 bill with a smile. In return, he opened the door and welcomed me inside. My former friends were seated at a table. As I entered, scanning the club, I hoped to spot what I had observed earlier. A table by the dance floor, occupied by 4 stunning young women. There were no men accompanying them, indicating it was likely a bachelorette party, which suited me perfectly. Walking through the club, Dee spotted me and attempted to wave and call my name. As I passed their table, all eyes turned to me, but I paid them no heed. Crossing the hall, I approached a table occupied by 4 women. "Why are 4 lovely ladies sitting without company?" I inquired. All 4 smiled at me, with the taller brunette laughing heartily and explaining, "We're here for our friend. Some idiot left her for another woman, so we're here to lift her spirits." The brunette seemed a bit tipsy. "Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to dance with your friend and help cheer her up." I turned to the petite redhead, who smiled and offered her hand for me to help her out of the booth. As we danced, I inquired about her name, Samantha. "I'm Jim," I introduced myself. "How could someone be foolish enough to let go of such a beautiful woman?" she responded. "Because he's an idiot." We shared a laugh as we continued dancing and chatting. Samantha shared that she was studying nursing in college and grew up nearby. As a slower song began, we kept dancing. With the music now softer, Samantha asked, "Are you married, Jim?" I confessed, we were no longer together. "Was it your wife who danced with Mark Lavalier earlier?" I noticed she disappeared after that dance, Samantha remarked. You weren't the only one who noticed, Jim replied. I flashed Samantha a sincere smile. Looks like you discovered our breakup at the same moment I did. Samantha returned the warmth with a smile, and we danced closely until the song's end. Both of us had recently experienced heartache from people we care about, and holding each other felt comforting. As the music ceased, we made our way back to Samantha's table. Addressing the others, Samantha declared, I know we agreed no men would join us, but I want Jim to stay. The brunette, teasingly playing with us, responded, I don't know. We did say no, guys. How about I treat us to a couple of bottles of champagne to make up for it, I proposed. I'm not sure. A deal's a deal, Samantha countered. She smiled at her friends and added, We saw Mark Lavalier leaving with his wife. In unison, they exclaimed, Didn't see a damn thing. 3 of the ladies shifted around the booth to accommodate Samantha and me. Before I could inquire about their names, the blonde beside Samantha questioned, Do you two have an open marriage? Absolutely not, I affirmed. Then another blonde chimed in, What did she say to you? Nothing. She claimed she was going to the restroom but slipped out the back of the club with Mark. I gestured with my thumb over my shoulder. And all my former acquaintances covered for her. Just then the waitress approached, inquiring if everyone enjoyed champagne. I received smiles all around. 2 bottles of your finest champagne, I ordered, eliciting applause from the girls. Before they could pose another question, I introduced myself. Their names were Kim, Christy, and Susan, all nursing students alongside Samantha. After the champagne arrived and everyone had a full glass, Christy, the brunette, inquired about my plans regarding my wife. As far as I'm concerned, our relationship ended the moment she walked out the door. Do you have kids? She asked. Unfortunately, yes. A son and daughter, 15 and 13. But soon they'll be more independent, and I'll address things with my wife. Samantha linked arms with me, declaring loudly, Forget about it, you're with me tonight. We toasted with our glasses and indulged in champagne. I shared a few jokes, and the girls reciprocated. Laughter and drinks flowed as they danced with guys and each other, while Samantha remained seated with me, her arm around me. As the evening wore on, Christy became upset, abruptly rising from the table and dashing off. We all turned to see where she went. Apparently, Dee had approached to talk to me, but Christy intercepted her near my ex-friend's table. Though we couldn't hear their conversation, we witnessed Christy jabbing Dee's chest repeatedly while yelling in her face. Ending the confrontation, Dee welled up with tears and resumed her seat. Then Christy vented her frustration at the entire table. The surrounding tables chuckled at the discomfort of my former companions. Upon Christy's return, Kim and Susan exchanged high fives with her. Christy sipped her champagne, flashed me a smile, and declared, None of these fools are coming near our table for the rest of the night. Glancing back at their table, I noticed they were all getting up to depart. Both Jane and Dee appeared teary-eyed, and none of them glanced our way. What happened, Christy? I saw that woman muster the courage to approach you, I questioned. So I pushed her away and let them know exactly what I think about those who aid cheaters. You left quite an impression. They obviously hoped I'd forgive Linda to ease their consciences. For that I owe you a kiss. Samantha seized my head playfully, protesting, Oh, you really shouldn't. Then she kissed me fervently, egged on by the other girls. After breaking the kiss, Samantha bestowed a sweet smile upon me. Kim teased, Get a room, you two. Actually, I interjected, I have a suite in a hotel nearby, and you ladies seem unfit to drive. If we hurry, we can still have champagne delivered to our room. After settling the bar tab, the 4 of us made our way to the hotel. Samantha clung to my arm while the others leaned on us for support. During the reception, I ordered 4 bottles of champagne for our room. When I mentioned to the receptionist that it was a honeymoon suite, the ladies burst into giggles. Riding the elevator, they began singing the wedding march. Samantha blushed deeply but held on to me even tighter. As we neared our room, the ladies joked about me carrying the bride over the threshold. Samantha looked at me with her captivating eyes and said, You don't have to if you don't want to. I pushed open the door, scooped Samantha into my arms, and carried her inside. Once in the room, Samantha embraced me and kissed me passionately. The ladies found it amusing, but their teasing ceased when Christy spotted the jacuzzi on the balcony. Before I could set Samantha down, they had all stripped down to their bras and underwear and were in the jacuzzi. Setting Samantha down, she continued to hold my hand and smile at me. There was a knock on the door. Champagne delivery for your room, the voice announced. We brought the champagne to the ladies, who joked and giggled. Susan insisted I was overdressed and urged me to undress. I laughed, explaining I was keeping Samantha company. They playfully urged Samantha to join them in the jacuzzi, but she simply smiled and led me back to the room. We headed to the bridal suite while one of her friends sang the wedding march from the balcony, laughing hysterically. The next morning, I woke with Samantha wrapped around me and 3 other undressed ladies sprawled across the king-sized bed. They must have joined us later. As Samantha and I got out of bed, she watched me. I smiled at her, and she returned the gesture. "Did you enjoy yourself, Jim?" she asked. "Yes, it was the best night of my life. Any regrets?" "Absolutely none." "Join me in the shower," Samantha beckoned, slipping out of bed and pulling me toward the bathroom, eager to try something new that I had never done with Linda. Once in the shower, I lifted Samantha up and positioned her on my hardness while standing, pressing her against the wall. She wrapped her legs around my waist. Although the standing position was challenging, it led to one of the most intense peaks I'd ever experienced. Samantha had already climaxed twice, each time loudly. Exiting the shower, Samantha and I discovered that our passionate lovemaking had awakened the other ladies. Despite their hangovers, they were in good spirits, ordering room service and sipping mimosas. Christy remarked, "I can't wait to try that shower. You two made it sound like it's the best shower ever." The 3 girls burst into laughter as Samantha and I exchanged smiles. After everyone had showered and departed, except for Samantha, who requested a ride home, she nestled close to me during the drive. "Jim, I understand what your wife did was awful, but you still have the option to reconcile with her. If not, I'd be happy if we could see each other again," Samantha expressed hopefully. "I would like that, Samantha. Right now, I'm not inclined to return to my ex-wife. I had a great time with you. You're what I need at the moment, so give me a call if you think we can make it work," I replied, kissing Samantha at her doorstep. As she opened the door, Christy greeted me from the couch with a smile and a wave. Exiting, I realized that I was postponing a decision regarding Linda. Returning to the club had been a spontaneous response to her infidelity, but it didn't resolve my issues with Linda. It certainly lifted my spirits. Upon arriving home, I took a moment to unwind, sinking into a chair in the dimly lit living room, lost in thought about how to navigate the end of my fractured marriage with minimal impact on my children. I didn't bother flicking on the light. Eventually, after an indeterminate amount of time, I heard a car pull into the driveway, followed by the sound of keys turning in the lock. Jim, I'm home," her voice echoed, mirroring the tone I was accustomed to hearing upon her return from errands. As she shut the front door and flipped on the light, I turned to face her. She appeared unchanged. The same blue dress draped over her, dark hair cascading down her back, familiar features. Rings adorning her fingers. Everything remained unchanged. It was as if nothing had transpired, as if she hadn't spent the entire night and morning betraying me with another man. This can't be real, I thought, expecting some visible difference, a trace of guilt or shame etched on her face. Yet there was nothing. "It's just me, same old me, always," she remarked with a gentle smile, fully aware of my inner turmoil. "Nothing's altered here. My love for you is as steadfast as ever." "I wish I could say the same," I replied. Hearing my own words, I realized the detached tone I had adopted, Jim, with the countenance of a man devoid of emotion. I mused, gazing at Linda before gesturing toward our bedroom. "Don't start. Go take a shower," I instructed firmly. Despite attempting to interject, Linda eventually obeyed, retreating upstairs. After her shower, she returned downstairs. "Jim, where are my clothes from last night?" she inquired. "I believe they're still in the hotel room where you left them." "You didn't bring them back?" "No." As if on the cusp of reproach, Linda hesitated, realizing any criticism of my actions would only amplify her own misdeeds. Instead, she lapsed into silence, recognizing the futility of such an argument. "Why did you leave them?" I asked. Linda sighed in response. "It was Mark Lavalier. He's wealthy and renowned, able to have any woman he desires. When he asked me to dance last night, I felt like the most sought-after woman in the room. He made me feel truly special," Linda gushed, still basking in the glow of the previous night. As she spoke, it was evident she had become lost in reminiscing about the moments shared with Mark, completely disengaged from our conversation. It was in that moment that I realized it was truly the end. Linda would forever treasure her time with Mark Lavalier more than any moment with me. I was merely an afterthought, I reflected. "Do you love him?" I inquired. "No, I don't love him. It was merely physical." "I love you, Jim," Linda replied. "You hesitated," I pointed out. "Linda, I recognize what that look means. You would have gone with him if he'd asked." "It was just one night. It was just physical. The conversation ends here. I need time to think. Pack some things for yourself and the children, and stay with your parents for the week." "But the discussion is closed. If you truly want to resolve this urgently, given how I'm feeling, you won't get the outcome you desire," I retorted. This time, there was anger in my tone and expression. Linda packed her bag and departed. As soon as she was out of sight, I set my plan in motion. Seeing Linda at the doorway in her familiar blue dress, unchanged, triggered an epiphany. I realized that change was necessary for my survival. I contacted my boss, requesting 2 weeks off. Then I rented a truck and purchased supplies from the hardware store: wood, drywall, paint, and 2 exterior doors. Upon returning home, I gathered my tools and got to work. Firstly, I removed the front door and the surrounding windows. After cutting out a sizable opening, I installed the 2 front doors, positioning the old one on the right and the new one on the left. Then I framed the wall along the main entrance, dividing the house into 2, and applied drywall. I was converting it into a duplex. A new back door was installed on the left side, where the new kitchen would be situated, mirroring the layout of the other side. The office was transformed into a 3rd bedroom on my side, while the dining room became the 3rd bedroom on Linda's side. Once completed, each side of the duplex nearly matched, except for the detached garage on Linda's side, which I plan to replicate on mine later. I changed the garage lock and the access code on the garage door to ensure only I had entry. Additionally, I erected a fence in the backyard, dividing it precisely in half, thus creating a duplex. I made daily calls to my children, informing them of my ongoing house renovations. Despite Linda's persistent request to talk, I insisted I wasn't ready to listen. A few days later, I reached out to Samantha, eager to hear her voice and perhaps arrange more time together. "I thought you had forgotten about me," she remarked. "I can't get you out of my mind. Would you consider going on a trip together?" I proposed. "No, stop teasing me," she responded. "I'm serious. I was thinking of a weekend getaway, just you and me," I clarified. "Really?" Samantha's interest was piqued. "Yes. How about the Bahamas?" I suggested. "Sounds tempting. Can you get away this weekend? Fly out on Thursday and return on Tuesday?" I asked eagerly. Yes. I'll just grab my phone and passport. We can buy everything else there," Samantha agreed. After exchanging excitement about our upcoming adventure, I bid her farewell to finalize my travel arrangements. A spontaneous trip to the Bahamas wasn't cheap, but why not take the chance? If Linda decides on a divorce, she'll receive half of our savings and my salary for child support. It amused me to think of it as Linda indirectly funding part of the trip with Samantha. I transferred our savings into a bank account solely under my name and redirected my salary to that account. While I doubted Linda would cancel the credit card, I wanted to ensure access to funds, just in case. Working tirelessly for 16 hours a day, I managed to erect most of the walls, all with some areas left unfinished on my part. By Wednesday, I had painted and trimmed the central wall on Linda's side. I knew I'd later need to separate utilities like electricity, gas, and water, but for now, since Linda's side shared utilities, she couldn't disconnect my side. Wednesday night, I instructed Linda to bring the kids home the following morning. Thursday morning, I secured my section of the house and waited outside, sitting on a chair. As they arrived and stepped out of the car, they appeared bewildered on the front lawn. Emma broke the silence. "Dad, what's going on?" I turned our home into a duplex. "Like it?" I asked, to which they all stared at me incredulously. "Don't worry, guys. I finished the right side and moved your belongings to your new rooms," I assured them, leading them through the new layout. While Linda attended to their bags, they were speechless. Our tour concluded in the living room of the right side. "But Dad, the living room is much smaller," Tommy observed. "Don't fret, you won't even notice. Plus, I plan to add a garage on the other side and eventually a pool with a jacuzzi," I promised, eliciting smiles from the children. Linda prompted the children to unpack while she exchanged glances with me, seemingly eager to talk. Instead, I joined the kids, helping them settle in and ensuring they had everything they needed. After unpacking, I pulled out sandwiches from a local deli, and we gathered around the kitchen table for lunch. "Dad, what's all this about?" Emma queried, her focus mostly on Linda's reaction. After spending the past few days with her, it was evident to Emma and Tommy that something was amiss with their mother. Dodging their inquiries. "Oh, we're nearing empty nest status. I've realized that things are bound to change. I'm just getting prepared, that's all," I mentioned. "Gee, Dad, you could have at least talked to us first to see how we feel about it," Emma remarked. "Well, actually it was Mom's idea. She felt we needed a change, something different," I explained, grinning at Linda, who appeared surprised. "Mom, why make such a big decision without discussing it with us?" Emma questioned. "Yes, Mom, don't you care about our thoughts?" Linda seemed puzzled. "It was just a misunderstanding." "Your father misinterpreted how I felt," Linda responded. "I don't know, dear. You seemed quite certain then. Once I saw your unwavering commitment, I knew there was no turning back," I added, causing Linda to appear on the verge of tears before she left the room. Tommy asked, "What's up with Mom lately? She's been crying over everything." I shrugged and suggested they ask her. Before Emma could ask more, I informed them of my planned trip out of town, ensuring them I'd call every evening but be unreachable otherwise. I kissed their heads and swiftly made my way to the door. I wondered if they noticed my lack of goodbye to their mom, who was in the bedroom. I picked Samantha up and we hit the road. It was an incredible experience. First-class flights, a luxurious resort, and royal treatment. A weekend filled with sun, sand, waves, food, and drinks. Simply fantastic. Samantha was genuinely appreciative and showed her enjoyment at every turn. By the time we headed back, we were both bronzed and so familiar with each other's bodies. Dropping Samantha off on Tuesday, she kissed me passionately. "Do you want to spend one more night?" she asked. "Yes, but we need to meet in person sometime and you have classes tomorrow. Call me before bed, I need to hear your voice." After our final kiss, I drove home feeling content. Samantha mentioned last night that she could see herself falling for someone like me. Pulling up to my house, I noticed Linda's car in her driveway. Opting to avoid her, I parked on the street in front of my side. While unpacking, Linda knocked on my door. "You're back," she noted. "Yes, I am. Can we talk?" "Sure, what's on your mind?" "Can I come in?" "No. This is my space, and you're not welcome here. Ever," I asserted, leaving Linda visibly taken aback before she retreated to her room. The realization hit me that living on her side of the duplex was not going to happen. We sat at her kitchen table. "Jim, I love you. I want things to go back to normal," she said. "It won't happen," I replied. "Why not?" she asked. "Because if you haven't noticed, you did something that changed how I feel about you forever." "That shouldn't define us," she argued. "Actually, it does. Nothing will erase what happened or how I feel about it. But I still love you," I said, gathering my thoughts. "Imagine we're on a date with friends. You leave me for another man and spend the entire night and morning with him. If this happened on our first date, would there have been a second?" "But Jim, it was Mark," she pleaded. "I don't care who it was. You chose someone else over me. You chose to sneak out of the club and be with Mark Lavalier. It was just one night. You've had your whole life to show me you love me. The moment someone more famous spoke to you, I became insignificant," I explained. "Does this mean I should keep you away from all famous people? There's a marathon this weekend. Will you sleep with the winner?" she countered. "Jim, that's not fair," she protested. In a calm voice, I responded, "So now you want fairness? You want a chance to minimize what you did, to talk me out of my anger, to shame me for feeling betrayed? A fair chance to accuse me of not prioritizing our family over my own pain? It seems I'm the only one expected to be fair in this relationship." I reached for her hand and she reluctantly took it. We locked eyes, and I knew I was about to deliver a painful blow. Linda needed to understand how our future relationship would unfold, and I was eager to show her. "It's too late, Linda." "Too late?" "Yes, it's too late. I found someone else," she revealed. "No," I countered. Linda recoiled, pulling her hands from mine. "Do you know who it is?" she asked. "I'm sure Dee and your friends told you about the redhead I danced with." "The one who held me tightly," I confirmed. "The woman who took your place on the anniversary you discarded." When the words "replaced" and "threw you away" were said, the reality hit her. I gazed into Linda's eyes and detected sadness. I understood that Dee must have sent Linda pictures of Samantha and me dancing closely, resembling lovers. With simmering anger in her voice, Linda asked, "Are you doing this to retaliate against me, introducing some 24-year-old girl to me to even the score?" "Actually, she's 21. I spent 4 days with her in the Bahamas. Remember that dream vacation we always talked about? It was fantastic." I knew I wore a broad smile as I spoke, unable to contain my excitement. The weekend truly had been remarkable. Linda glared at me once I finished speaking. I sensed my words had stoked her anger. I knew my lingering smirk only fueled it further. Reminding myself of the children, I took a deep breath, willing my face to relax and the grin to fade. Linda's eyes burned with fury, indicating she was about to unleash a torrent of condemnation. But upon seeing my grin resurface, she realized I anticipated every word she intended to utter. Linda froze. Then she let out a slow exhale, shut her mouth, and rested her hand on the table. We sat in silence, locked in a stare. I could tell Linda wanted to lash out at me, to scold me for my actions. However, she recognized she had lost her moral high ground. The leverage she relied on in our relationship was built on love and trust, qualities she had casually discarded for a single night of passion. It dawned on Linda that her actions had exacted a heavier toll than she had anticipated. I'm certain that when Linda made the decision to be with Mark, she believed she was just cashing in some of the chips she had accumulated throughout our marriage. It finally dawned on her that she had recklessly put everything on the line. Linda sat silently for a moment, her hands clasped together on the table, staring off, Sir, it doesn't matter, I love you. Yes, you keep insisting that your love holds special significance. But why should I value your love when it's clear that my love for you means nothing to you after what you've done? So why should I care about your love? But I don't want to lose you. Well, I fail to understand how you thought you could shatter my trust completely and still expect to keep me. You took me for granted, and now you don't deserve me. Linda appeared bewildered. I'm going to my place. There's still a lot of work to be done around the house. I'll be back for dinner with you and the kids. Please don't bother me until then. I stood up and headed back to my apartment. Linda wept as I departed. Leaving Linda was incredibly painful. I longed to embrace her like before, but deep down, I knew there was no returning to what we once were. The Linda I knew as my wife was gone and would never return. Anything I have with her now will serve as a painful reminder of everything we could have had. Everything she carelessly destroyed without a second thought or a hint of remorse. Before dinner, the kids and I ventured to my side of the house to explore. I showed them the new kitchen area and my plan to replace the back wall with glass overlooking the pool. They seemed concerned as they observed the fence dividing the backyard. They grasped that this would be mine. Then I indicated where their new rooms would be on my side of the house. Dad, why do I need 2 bedrooms here? Tommy inquired. Because this side is going to be my home, and that side will be your mother's home, I explained. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Tommy asked. Dad, Mom won't say anything, no matter how many times we ask, Emma added. No, we're just separated. I don't want to be a weekend dad, so I thought it would be best to split the house, and you two can choose which side you want to live on. Just as we were about to continue, Linda popped her head through the front door to announce that dinner was ready. We ate in silence, with Linda appearing tense. It was evident that the children had picked up on more than we realized. Tommy blurted out too loudly, I'll move in with Dad once he's done decorating my room. Linda's face registered shock. Dad told you we're splitting up. We're not, it's just a misunderstanding and we're still discussing it, Linda clarified. Emma slammed her hand on the table and exclaimed, Who's changing? I want to know. Emma and Tommy exchanged looks between Linda and me. I locked eyes with Linda, who avoided my gaze and stared at her plate. When Linda began to cry, the children got their answer. I informed the children that their mother was exhausted and needed rest. Guiding Linda to the bedroom, I assisted her in undressing and tucked her into bed, planting a quick kiss on her forehead, reminiscent of comforting a child after a nightmare. I switched off the light and closed the door. My focus shifted to Linda, akin to handling a grown child who had committed a grave offense and faced a lifelong sentence. While I still harbored love for her, she was no longer a prominent figure in my daily life or thoughts. Initially, I checked on Tommy in his room. He lay on his bed, engrossed in correspondence with his friends. When I asked if he wanted to talk, he declined. Proceeding to Emma's room, I found her angry and tearful. Why did she do this, Dad? She questioned. You'll have to ask her. Forgiveness isn't easy, I replied. Then I don't know if I can forgive myself, she lamented. I understand, but I want us to remain a family, I reassured her. We are. I just won't share a room with Mom anymore, she declared. We embraced, exchanged declarations of love, and I returned to my part of the house. This became our new routine. As I typically left for work before the kids woke up, our mornings remained unchanged. Linda and I continued to split responsibilities for shuttling the kids to their various activities and events. Family dinners persisted in Linda's section of the house whenever possible. Despite Linda's attempts to discuss our situation weekly, I rebuffed her, stating my reluctance to engage. School functions became noticeably different. I consciously avoided standing or sitting near Linda during our children's events. If she approached me, I quickly excused myself to the restroom and relocated upon my return. I was rarely alone for long, as single or divorced acquaintances often gravitated toward me. They invariably inquired about our relationship status, to which I consistently replied that we were separated. As of the following month, I invested in new attire, appliances, kitchen fixtures, and furnishings for my side of the house, transforming it into a stylish bachelor pad. With a large TV and an updated entertainment system, I spared no expense. When I acquired a high-end convertible, Linda voiced concerns about our finances. Jim can. We afford all this. The car must have been expensive. Linda, my car was older than yours by 8 years, and I needed an upgrade. You've always replaced your car twice as often as I did, so I decided to catch up on those missed years with my new car. And as for everything else that's new, did you really expect me to live in a rundown place? What about the furniture? I thought I was considerate by not making you part with any of the furniture you chose for your home. I'd be happy to share it with you. It's fine, your taste in furniture never appealed to me. Why didn't you say something earlier? I kept quiet because I wanted you to be happy. Furniture wasn't a big deal to me. I let her ponder that for a moment. Don't worry, we're financially stable. Actually, the house is paid off, and once the kids move out, my side will be too big for me. I plan to rent it out for extra income so money won't be an issue. Linda flashed me her most approving smile, the someone's getting lucky today smile, and reached out to pat my shoulder. I'm not complaining, I like your new car and you look great in your new clothes. Thanks, I can't take all the credit. Tommy and Emma wanted a convertible to drive, and Samantha helped me pick out the clothes and furniture. Turns out we have similar tastes. At the mention of Samantha, Linda's smile faltered and her hand dropped from my shoulder. Oh, I was just curious. With that, she turned and walked away. I hadn't meant to flaunt Samantha in Linda's face, but she was becoming a significant part of my life. I also realized that I often thought about Samantha and seldom about Linda's feelings. Samantha started frequenting my side of the house regularly. Eventually, Tommy moved into my side as his main bedroom. Emma, who had mostly stayed on Linda's side, began spending more time with Samantha. Samantha seemed to assume the role of Emma's cool older sister. Before long, Samantha was spending weekends and most weeknights with me. The only contention arose when I insisted Samantha join us for family dinners. For the second time, Linda remained polite, but it was evident she didn't want this to become a routine. The next day, as I was leaving for work, Linda intercepted me. Jim, I appreciate our conversation, but I'd prefer if you didn't bring your girlfriend to our dinners. That's our time to be a family with the kids. This is great. Going forward, I'll skip dinner when Samantha isn't there, but I'll also extend an open invitation for the kids to join me and Samantha for dinner if they want. That's not fair, Jim. Dinner time is our only chance to be a family together. So, are we talking about fairness now, Linda? All right, let's be honest here. Samantha is becoming a significant part of my life, and I want her to be more involved. Samantha gets along well with the kids. Excluding her from our family dinners doesn't seem fair to her. Fair to me or fair to the kids. If you want to exclude her, you'll be excluding me too. But Jim, Linda, your idea of honesty has always been self-serving. Forget about my feelings. I bet you thought you were being honest when you snuck out the back door to be with Mark Lavalier. Even though we weren't living together anymore, it was surprising to see how Linda still thought she could manipulate me easily. Linda, you threw integrity out the window that night, so if you don't like it, fairness would be for you to start cooking dinners on my side, and I'll let you join us. Samantha loves cooking, and she's great at it. With tears in her eyes, Linda said, I'm sorry I brought this up. Samantha is more than welcome to join us for dinner anytime she wants. After the pool and hot tub were finished, Tommy particularly enjoyed hanging out with Kim, Christy, and Susan by the new pool. They shamelessly flirted with Tommy, engaging in a friendly competition to see who could make him blush the most. Their competition escalated with tighter swimsuits, but Christy had an advantage with her ample curves. When she kissed Tommy in the pool, pressing her chest against him, she won the contest. Tommy couldn't leave the pool for a good 10 minutes, despite the cold water. Tommy was undoubtedly the winner in their game, gaining confidence and eventually getting a girlfriend at school. Once the girls met Tommy's girlfriend, they stopped flirting with him and treated her like the luckiest girl. Samantha has some amazing friends, and no, I never allowed Linda to visit my side of the house. I didn't want her complicating my relationship with Samantha. Unfortunately, a few years later, Samantha graduated from high school, and our relationship ended. I could see it in Samantha's expression at Susan's wedding, where we attended together. I realized I was essentially becoming her provider due to our age gap. While it didn't bother me, I sensed it bothered Samantha. Despite our wonderful rapport, spending entire weekends together and integrating with each other's families, there was an unspoken tension. When Samantha hinted at relocating, I proposed to her, but she expressed her desire to adhere to a family tradition instead. Although she didn't explicitly say it, I could sense her internal conflict. I was perfect for her in many ways, just not the right age. I felt like Samantha was taking me for granted, assuming that great men like me were abundant. I subtly tried to make her realize that her rigid standards were creating an insurmountable barrier for any man. Just like with Linda. My success seemed to backfire, as Samantha seemed to think I was interchangeable. I reminded Samantha of Linda's similar mindset and where it led her. Samantha adamantly denied ever making the same mistake, sealing our fate. Ultimately, I understood Samantha's decision. I assured her that if she ever changed her mind, I would be there for her. Perhaps we might reconnect later in life when the age gap isn't as significant. I cherished every moment spent with Samantha, appreciating her honesty and our conversations, unlike Linda's deceitful actions. As for Linda's friends, who were once my own, they occasionally tried to persuade me to reconcile with Linda, but their arguments fell flat. I would counter their arguments with the reality of how it feels to be cheated on by your spouse, which they seem to find acceptable and even encouraged, based on what I witnessed that night. Actually, I believe it wasn't mere chance that led us to a club frequented by Mark Lavalier. I just happened to be married to the most attractive woman. Call it karma. A few months later, I heard that the girls had switched their girls' night out to a new club, one where Mark Lavalier was known to frequent, without informing their husbands. I casually mentioned to Dave, a coworker, that I saw Dee dancing with Mark at the club. Dave's friend even noticed that Mark vanished about an hour later, coinciding with the departure of the group of ladies from the club. However, Dave's friend didn't witness Dee leaving with the group. When confronted, all the wives denied being at the club and insisted it was a mistake. But days later, Dave's friend shared a photo showing Mark Lavalier conversing with the wives at the table. Eventually, the wives admitted their presence at the club, but each claimed no one left with Mark. However, their conflicting stories eventually revealed the truth. Reluctant to betray their friend, the wives refused to identify who left with Mark. By the time they disclosed it was Dee, the damage to trust had already been done. According to what I heard during a meeting of husbands to compare their wives' accounts, Dave aptly summarized the situation. He noted how the wives covered for each other for a long time and how easily they lied. This wasn't their first girls' night out. How could they be sure it wasn't Dee's turn to have an encounter with Mark Lavalier or someone else? Each husband observed the expressions on their wives' faces when Mark Lavalier approached them that evening at our table. Everyone overheard their wives condoning Linda's behavior and expressing envy over her opportunity. After Linda attended the first bachelorette party, all the husbands became familiar with her. They were initially pleased with the newfound excitement in the bedroom, as Linda discussed her encounter with Mark. However, a few months later, one husband jokingly complained about hating sleeping on silk sheets. After comparing notes, they realized both sets of silk sheets were new and identical in color. In discussions with other husbands, it came to light that 4 couples had recently acquired new white silk sheets for their beds following Dee's night with Mark. The husbands grew concerned that their wives were revisiting their own encounters with him. All 4 couples ended up divorcing within a year. I learned of this when Dave, the first to divorce, apologized to me and explained the events leading to a split. Subsequently, each husband personally expressed regret to me for their involvement that night with Linda. They all essentially admitted that if they had stood up for me, it might have sent a clearer message to their own wives, potentially saving their marriages. As for Mark Lavalier, his habit of pursuing married women eventually angered the wrong person. No one knows who, but as Mark exited the club with his latest conquest, someone in a ski mask stunned him with a taser. Before Mark could recover, the assailant struck him in the groin. While Mark screamed in pain, the attacker severely injured both of his kneecaps. Despite having video footage, no one was ever apprehended. There were too many husbands with motives and opportunities. Mark lost his ability to walk. Regarding Linda, our last discussion about our relationship occurred on the day Emma moved out. By then, we were already divorced, and I had leased out my portion of the house, relocating to a seaside condo. Standing in the driveway, Linda asked if she could speak to me after Emma left for college. "Jim, I still love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. I haven't dated or even glanced at another man since then. I know you haven't been in a serious relationship with anyone since Samantha, and I'd like you to move back in with me, just to see how things go." Linda then removed a necklace from around her neck and handed it to me. Hanging from it was my wedding ring, the same ring I had given to Dee the night Linda left me. Linda gazed at me with hope in her eyes. "You still don't grasp what went awry, Linda. That night you believed it was a test of my love for you, but in reality, it was a test of your love for me. But I truly love you. No, you cherish what we once shared. You loved our seemingly flawless marriage, having the ideal husband and children. You appreciated that I didn't treat you like an object or a trophy wife, that we made decisions together. You relished our carnal moments, even if less frequent, as intense as our initial encounters. You admired that I prioritized your feelings above all else. You valued the financial stability I provided for your pursuits. But most of all, you treasured my unwavering trust in you, without hesitation. Now, you claim to love me more than ever, realizing you won't find another who could make you as happy. No one will ever love you as intensely as I once did." Linda remained motionless, holding the necklace at arm's length, her grip tightening until her hand turned white. "You failed to appreciate what we had, and now it's lost. I can't be near you anymore. I'll never again give you the chance to hurt me like you did. I thought it was us against the world, but you destroyed us when you chose to be with Mark Lavalier." Linda began to sob. "How many times must I say I regret it? It was never about Mark, Linda. You thought yourself fortunate when he took you home. But I was fortunate too. When I was at my lowest, your friends tried to convince me I was foolish, but you showed me we were truly special. Not because of you, but because of me. You left because my love was stronger, not yours. My love would never betray, like you did. It was the melody to which we danced, making us unique. As I sat at this table, furious, contemplating, I saw Samantha across the room, looking sorrowful. When she caught my gaze, she smiled. That smile reminded me I still had a chance for happiness, to invest my love into a new we, a different us. You opened my eyes and set me free. With that, I climbed into my convertible and drove off with a grin. I couldn't wait to return home. Samantha left her job and moved in with me last week. Since then, she's shown me she'll always need me in her life. Trust is a beautiful thing.
Story 2.
I caught my wife cheating with her assistant, and surprisingly, it ended up earning me a promotion. My wife, I'll call her Sarah, and I worked for a pretty big not-for-profit in Western Canada. This particular organization is in the public eye and has a lot to do with politicians. For the last 8 or so years, our organization has been trying to get a certain agreement signed and recognized by the federal government. Anyways, without getting too into the details of that, my wife's position meant that she was constantly on the news, working with bigwigs, traveling the country, and kissing people's butts, literally and figuratively. Now, I found out she was cheating on me with her assistant that she hired about 6 months ago. She was in the department upstairs, and I was in the registration department. We actually met at the organization 8 years ago. We both started within a few months, and we both worked our butts off to get into the positions that we're in now. It wasn't easy, and obviously, like I said, she kisses butts, and she's super charismatic. She has a way with words. When she speaks, people listen. When she walks into a room, she demands people's attention. I'm a little more introverted, and for years that really worked for us. Well, I ended up having some health troubles and had to go on short-term disability, so I wasn't at work for a little bit. And this is sort of when it all started, or at least when I figured something was up. Some things to note: I'm almost positive that her assistant didn't know we were married. I'm sure of this because he would look at me strange when I brought her lunch or coffee in the mornings like, "Who the heck are you?" He knew who I was and that I worked in the building. But I'm not sure that Sarah ever told him who I was to her. I mean, it's not like we went around the building saying, "Hey, we're married," but the people who work there know, and gossip travels fast around the organization. People like drama and like starting drama, which is why I ended up finding out that things were going on. A little background info: Sarah is 45 and I'm 43. It turns out that we actually went to the same high school, but it was a bigger school, so our paths never crossed. We have 2 kids, a son who's 7 and a daughter who's 5. They are literally the loves of my life, and I truly believe my life didn't start until they arrived. We hit it off right away, and at the time, it was a big deal that we started seeing each other at work because it was against office policy to date anyone that you worked with. Technically, Sarah and I never really worked together because we dealt with such different issues. But when we had company-wide meetings, obviously, we'd see each other there. And sometimes the projects I was working on would overlap with what she was dealing with upstairs. Eventually, people just let it slide, and it became another thing. And like I said, we never screamed it off the rooftops, and nobody seemed to mind. Not only that, but when you work in an office, people get kind of crazy. People flirt with everybody, and my wife is attractive, I will say that. I constantly heard it from other people and even heard it from a lot of the female staff. People in an office space get kind of horny. It's sort of pathetic, in a way. So her assistant, I'll call him Trevor, he's 29, and he has a political science degree. I'll admit it, he's a good-looking guy, and there were only about 12 men in the whole building compared to like 40 or so women. So we were outnumbered. And when Trevor started, these single ladies literally pounced at him from the start. It seemed like Sarah could have cared less. She seemed all business. She didn't even bring him up to me, really. I knew that she was hiring an assistant, but I didn't know that she hired a male. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But when I saw him and saw how good-looking he was, I sort of understood why she didn't say anything. At one point, she even said that he reminded her of me, but a younger version of me. And another time, she said that Trevor was the version of me if I didn't get in my own head and took a different career path. I was sort of offended by that. How am I supposed to take that? When I found out that she hired him and didn't tell me for a few weeks, I asked her why, and she said, "Why is it such a big deal?" Then she laughed in my face and said that I felt threatened by a little boy. I'm like, "Threatened?" And she's like, "Yeah, you're jealous." And yeah, I guess I was, in some way. And yeah, maybe I was threatened. But I tried to argue to her that her omitting the fact that he was a guy and was good-looking sort of made a point. And she said I was being ridiculous because I wouldn't have had the same reaction if it was a good-looking woman. And I was like, yeah, okay, true, but would she still have slept with him and made comments that he reminded her of a young me if it was a woman? No. Not only that, but I heard our secretary asking her questions about Trevor, and they'd both be giggling, another red flag. Yeah, okay, maybe I was jealous, but who wouldn't be? Not only that, but I wasn't feeling well physically, so it was really eating away at me. I wasn't feeling my best. I wasn't my best, and I knew it. And I feel like Sarah really took advantage of that. So yeah, I go on short-term disability, and this means I'm at home for a couple of weeks. I become the main caregiver for my kids, and Sarah starts to work really long hours and goes away on trips. When she was on these trips, she took this assistant with her, and then she's posting pictures on Instagram of herself in clothes that aren't really professional or like on the beach. And I can tell that she has no bikini top on. The photo is just of her, but I know that he's with her. I comment on the photo and I'm like, scandalous, but she doesn't react to it or anything. Then I creep Trevor's page, he's got a public page, and see that he's in fact posting photos of the same beach, but it's of the water. But then I know that they're together, and I know that my wife is laying on the beach next to him without a bikini top on. I text her and I'm like, should you be posting photos like that on Instagram? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you're not wearing a shirt and you're showing a lot of skin. Do you think that's smart to be doing when you have a position that you do? People look up to you. Then we got in a huge fight, and she didn't talk to me for the rest of her work trip. And I say that lightly, work trip. She was sleeping with him at this point. And another note, yeah, these work trips took her all over the country, and she'd get time for business and pleasure. That disgusts me now, but I'm trying to just get through this with self-deprecating humor because that's the only way I'm surviving right now. But yeah, she'd have free time when on these trips. This particular trip was in Kelowna, British Columbia, so it was nice weather, and she knew she'd have some time for the beach, apparently. While she was there, I was taking care of the kids. I don't mind this at all, but what I did mind was the fact that she was having relations with someone other than me, her husband. And it's embarrassing because everyone in the office knew this. They'd stay at work late together, constantly be in meetings with a closed door and closed window blinds. But she tried to argue that she was having meetings about confidential things. Oh yeah, confidential, all right. A woman at work who didn't actually like her very much, Angela, ended up telling me recently that she heard moans, slurps, and all kinds of atrocious sounds coming from that room. Angela and Sarah shared an office wall. And the thing about this office building is that it was gifted to us and didn't have as many offices in the building originally. When the organization started, we literally didn't have any money, so we had to just make do and throw up walls. Some of the office walls in this place are paper thin and weren't meant to be permanent. If Angela would have told me about these noises she heard back then, I would have just thought that she's saying this to complain about Sarah because she doesn't like her. But after it all came out and I caught them red-handed, I don't doubt her for a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, she's spending a lot of late nights there, and there are whispers going on about how close they're getting and whatnot. I'm in total denial. I can't believe she'd ever do anything like that to me. She posts more pictures on her Instagram, and it looks like someone is taking these photos of her. These photos look like they're in really intimate restaurants, dark, candle-lit places. When she comes home after going out like this, she claims they're business meetings, and I sort of say, they look like really intimate business meetings. With my particular sickness at the time, I was having a hard time, and she never, not once, asked how I was doing. She was always too busy working, and I can't even remember the last time she was home to say goodnight to our kids. Even our kids were asking, "Where's Mommy? When's Mommy going to be home? I miss Mommy." It broke my dang heart. And what do I tell them? Oh, Mommy's working. Mommy's trying to help her citizens. Nope, Mommy's just cheating on Daddy and throwing her family away. Anyways, one particular evening, I get a text from a number I didn't recognize, and it was like, "Get to work right now. You're going to want to see this. Don't call your wife. Don't let her know you're on your way, but head for your office." And I'm like, weird. I tried calling the number, but it just disconnected. So I call my mom to come over to be at the house because my kids were sleeping, and I didn't want them to wake up. So she comes over and asks if everything is okay, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I just have to go help Sarah with something." So I go and park down the road so she can't see my car in the parking lot. I sneak into the side door with my key card. The lights are off in the building, but when I go upstairs I can see that the lights in her side of the building are still on. It's long after everyone has gone home for the day. Too long, in fact. Then I walk slowly up to her office. The door is open, and I see Trevor just giving it to her on the desk. She's bent over, and she looks up and sees me. I'm just standing there. She has to hit Trevor to stop, and then she quickly pulls her skirt back down, and he quickly zips up his pants. And all I could say is, "Wow, Sarah." And it's the same old story. She tries to tell me that she can explain everything. It's not what I thought. And then I'm trying to walk away, and she's pulling at my arm, and I'm trying to brush her off. Trevor doesn't come out of her office, but I'm trying to make my way down the stairs and back out the side door. She's following me, and then suddenly she switches gears and starts getting mad at me for catching them. She's like, "Who told you? Why are you here? You didn't trust me, did you?" And that last one made me laugh. I said, "You clearly haven't given me any reason to trust you. I mean, what did I just walk in on?" But she's getting mad at me. She starts saying that I'm insecure, and she can't be with someone who's like this. Then she starts attacking my illness, saying things like I'm not the man she married and I'm weak and bringing her down. I literally had to tell her to shut up and not come home. I got in my car and drove back home. So somehow, word got around to what had happened, and people from work started texting me, asking if it was true and if I was okay. Yeah, in that order. Shortly after that, I was supposed to get off of short-term disability. I asked to work from home for a little bit until I figured out what I wanted to do and how I was going to handle the situation. I knew that Sarah had the ability to pull the plug on my job, but I didn't want to lose my house or my kids, so I knew I needed this job. I needed to figure out my next move first. I contacted my lawyer and told them I wanted to start the divorce process. Well, where I'm from, we have to separate first, so I was like, okay, yep, let's do that. Then, a few days after that, I got a message from the same random number that texted me before. It was a video, and the video was all shaky, but you could tell that it was Sarah and Trevor making out in her office again, on her desk. They were wearing different clothes, so it wasn't the same night that I caught them. Then another message came in, and it was another video. This time it was of Trevor and Sarah making out in her car in the parking lot. I saved them all. I replied, "Thank you," and they responded with a thumbs up emoji. I sat there for a while wondering what I was going to do. I had to make it good. Then I knew there was an election coming up, and what I mean by that is that the person Sarah worked for had to be elected back into office. The only way Sarah was going anywhere was if the person she worked for didn't get voted back in. So I contacted the person who was the opposition to Sarah's boss. I also happened to know that this person had a really good chance of getting in but just needed a little bit more endorsement. I figured that this whole thing with Sarah could really look bad for Sarah's boss and their campaign. Well, when I contacted the opposition, I told them everything and sent them the videos that had been sent to me. I started endorsing this person. And as soon as this happened, the videos ended up getting spread all over the office. It totally divided the office. The organization had some really tense energy around it, and the whole process took about 5 months. During those 5 months, I had to go into the office and pretend like nothing was happening and that Sarah and I weren't going through a separation. But it was awkward, I'm not going to lie. And Trevor ended up getting let go. I don't even know exactly when, but Sarah let him go. And then she hired some 18-year-old intern. The intern was a girl. But not only that, as soon as these women at the office found out I was single, they were coming at me left, right, and center. I hadn't had this kind of attention in years, and honestly, it felt good. Surely I flirted back. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I'll never crap where I eat ever again. Been there, done that, and my wife sucker punched me with a good-looking F-boy. Sarah tried to come home a few times, apologizing, saying she missed the kids. But I said, "You were never around before. You never mentioned anything about missing me or the kids." The only thing that changed is that she's going to lose it all in a matter of months. Legally, I had to give her some visitation rights, so she did have the right to come and see them at scheduled times. But I wouldn't be there. My mom was in the house, though, while this was happening, because I didn't actually trust Sarah. She was very much the person who would try to pull a fast one and lock me out of the house or attempt to brainwash the kids against me. I wasn't going to let that happen. Anyways, when the election came, Sarah's boss didn't get in. Eureka! Sweet, sweet revenge. Within a week, the opposition came in, and they hired someone else to be there instead of Sarah. Not only that, but I was given a $155,000 promotion. We still have a bit to go on this road to divorce, but I just wanted to share my story. Think twice about dating anybody at work. You never know who you'll catch bending them over the desk you chose together. As for the messenger, I did end up asking Angela if it was her, but she was adamant that it wasn't. She thinks that maybe it was one of these women here that wanted to shack up with me for themselves. I like to think that it's Angela, and she'll just never admit that it was her. I think she just really saw her chance to get rid of Sarah and took it. Looks like Sarah's extracurricular activities really came back to bite her in the buns. Talk about office drama hitting new lows, or should I say, new angles? I mean, come on, Trevor, couldn't you find a more discreet location for your rendezvous than the boss's desk? Maybe a broom closet or something, at least then you could blame any strange sounds on the cleaning supplies. And kudos to our protagonist for turning the tables with some strategic political maneuvering. Who knew marital issues could have such an impact on government elections? But hey, at least our protagonist got a promotion out of the whole mess, silver lining, right? Who says revenge isn't a dish best served with a side of career advancement? Just another day in the life of office politics, I guess. And can we talk about the anonymous messenger here for a second? I mean, someone really must like you over there. If that's not a guardian angel looking out for you, I don't know what is. Or, you never know, maybe it was Angela, and she just busted down the door of opportunity. What do you make of this? Do you think the secret texter was Angela? Thank you for joining us today.
Story 3.
I was devastated when I found out my wife had been in bed with another man twice and was about to do it again. I've read about the overwhelming emotions that hit a person when they realize their once solid and reliable marriage is now just a story. When the emotional storm settled, my marriage was unrecognizable. Everything was gone. Trust, respect, admiration, concern, and love had all disappeared. All that remained was devastation, pushing me to give up and walk away. I wanted to end my marriage. There was nothing worth saving. My wife had turned our life into a pile of garbage. Susie and I had a bad fight about remodeling our living room. She thought the furniture was old and wanted to redecorate, but I explained it was only 2 years old, expensive, and not worth replacing. She insisted on something new, and I may have made a mistake by suggesting she was tired of me. She sarcastically said she might go to bed with someone else, and in anger, I shouted that she should decide what she wants, but not expect me to wait for her. When she mentioned she should have married Bill instead of me, I got furious, yelled that I never wanted to hear her name again, and refused to buy new furniture. The argument ended, and I left for the club to cool down. Bill had always been my main rival, the golden boy in our community. He once had his eye on my wife, but she chose me. Though they met during a short separation, he almost succeeded in winning her over. Despite my hard work and success, Bill's seemingly effortless prosperity made me jealous. I had no interest in pursuing a career in business. My upbringing emphasized the values of hard work, honesty, and reliability. I was taught never to harbor jealousy towards others' success. Despite these principles, a certain sensitivity lingered within me, particularly concerning Susie. The memory of their first meeting and the way he touched her remains etched in my mind. Around 9 in the evening, my home phone rang on my mobile. Deciding to let it go to voicemail, I avoided speaking to my wife. Stress and a few beers fueled my decision. I feared uttering unpleasant words that I might later regret. Upon listening to the voicemail, the message conveyed an apology for an earlier exchange. The caller urged me to contact Susie since I wouldn't be returning home soon. The message hinted at going out alone, concluding with a cryptic remark, "It wasn't enough." As I began to recover from our earlier dispute, anger resurfaced. Pouring another beer, I consumed it hastily before setting out to find her. Checking all the town's bar parking lots proved futile. Her car was nowhere in sight. Suspecting she might be with someone familiar, I headed to Patty's best friend's house. To my dismay, Susie's car was parked there. Dave, Patty's husband, greeted me at the door, mentioning the night out and their decision to go bar hopping. When I inquired about Patty's car, he confirmed their presence at a bachelor party. Determined to locate them, I visited the bachelor's place, discovering Patty's car in the parking lot. Contemplating a direct confrontation with Susie, I opted to sober up in the car before taking any action. Around 11, they emerged from the bachelor's place and departed in Patty's car. Following at a discreet distance, they made their way to a downhill bar, as Dave had suggested. Observing from the parking lot, I anticipated their move to the next location. At precisely 11:30, they arrived at what seemed to be their final stop, a pub and a hotel. Concerned about Susie's intentions, I realized I needed to find out more. Attempting a makeshift disguise with a baseball cap and a plain t-shirt from the trunk, I sneaked into the pub. Despite not being completely sober and my failed attempt at anonymity, thanks to my name on the t-shirt, I figured it was better than no disguise at all. Inside, I spotted Susie with Bill, seated at the back of the bar, engrossed in conversation. Seeking a discreet vantage point, I noticed an empty bus behind Susie. Silently moving there, I overheard their entire conversation, except for a few whispered moments. Susie thanked Bill for coming, and he reciprocated the sentiment. Bill reminisced about their time together 7 years ago, and twice since my marriage to Susie. Their reunion tonight seemed driven by a desire for revenge after our earlier fight. As I listened, the painful truth unfolded. Susie had betrayed me twice before and planned to do so again tonight. Despite her professed love, her actions revealed a selfish and indifferent nature. Her motive wasn't love, it was revenge, shattering my perception of our relationship. The conversation left me devastated, and I realized I no longer loved her. It was a profound loss, and I nearly succumbed to tears, accepting that it was over. I waited, contemplating how much time would elapse before they proceeded to the room. The words exchanged between them hinted at Susie's readiness, and I could almost envision the smile on her face. Aware of her presence based on their conversation, my anger simmered beneath the surface as they stood up and made their way to the elevators. Suppressing the urge to lash out physically, I trailed them to the lobby. Uncertain of their exact floor, I approached the receptionist and requested a call to Pill's room. He angrily answered, correcting my misconception that it was room 422, not 312. Threatening police involvement, he forcefully hung up the phone. Taking the elevator to the 4th floor, I approached room 422. Eavesdropping until their actions became apparent, I knocked assertively, savoring the anticipation of disrupting their illicit rendezvous. Stepping back from the peephole, I forcefully slammed the door, causing the safety chain to break. The shocking scene revealed my with nothing on wife on the bed, her face turning pale as she screamed. Pill protested, exclaiming, "Oh my God, no!" as he recovered. He demanded my departure, threatening to summon security. Despite Susie's pleas, I sternly informed her not to return home. Surprisingly calm, I sat in the car for a while to calm down further. I waited to see if the police would show up or if Susie would leave with Pill. About 15 minutes later, Bill left the hotel and Susie got into her car. They didn't stay in the hotel room after I left, but the damage had been done. Adding insult to injury, or as they say, pouring gasoline on the fire, gave me an idea. I went home and went to bed. I'm not sure when the phone rang, but it was Patty calling. She explained that Susie is staying with Dave and her, so I shouldn't worry. I told Patty that I won't worry about Susie anymore. I don't care. Patty woke me up unnecessarily. I asked about the time, and she said it's 3 a.m., claiming I can't say I don't care, knowing I love Susie and she loves me. Patty shared that Susie is at their place, crying about her mistakes tonight, wanting forgiveness, and asking to come back home. I informed Patty that Susie can't return home and asked about her previous involvement with Pill. Patty expressed relief for not having a serious hangover and being up since 8 a.m. By 10 a.m., I was ready to face Susie. I called Patty and told her Susie could come back home if she wanted. I stood at the entrance when Susie arrived, accompanied by Dave and Patty, probably to ensure no physical damage. Seeing a pile in the front yard, Susie asked what it was. I explained it's everything reminding us of each other, including gifts, photos, and old furniture. I set our wedding photo on fire as a symbolic act, signaling the end of our marriage. Flames quickly engulfed everything, leaving only ashes and charred furniture frames. I told Susie she won and hoped it was worth it. Our marriage is over, and she can take everything. I don't want anything and hope not to remind her of me. She'll get details from my lawyer. Shortly after, sirens approached, police arrived, and firefighters extinguished the remaining embers. I apologized for the trouble, clarifying I burned the remnants of the marriage. I was taken into custody. As they led me away, I saw Susie crying. I spent a couple of days in jail, and a psychiatrist was called to assess my mental state. They discovered that I was distressed and devastated, but still mentally sound, surprisingly. They might have released me earlier, but they wanted to observe me for a few days just to be certain. I paid the bail and retrieved my car from the office parking lot, where I had stored the things I wanted to keep, mainly clothes and personal items. Then my trial began, and I admitted guilt to all charges, receiving a $5,000 fine plus court costs. It was a small cost to end my shattered marriage. Susie contested the divorce, persistently leaving voicemails on my mobile, pleading for forgiveness and reconciliation. Despite the $5,000 cost, I never heard from her after leaving a message on her home phone, expressing that while she claimed it meant nothing to her, it meant everything to me. The divorce was finalized, and I gave her everything she desired just to put it behind me. Pill's wife discovered the situation, divorced him, leaving him in a difficult situation. Susie wasn't the only wife he had comforted during marital troubles. A couple of weeks after finding him with his wife in a hotel room, I encountered Pill in a bar. I suggested he might face a serious accident when his divorce was finalized, and he started selling off his remaining possessions. Soon, he left town, and not many people seemed to miss him. Occasionally, I bump into Susie on the streets, and she apologizes, asking if I'll call her to talk. I just nod and walk away. To this day, I haven't called her, though she continues to ask. Maybe someday I'll decide to call her. Story 2. My wife and I have been together for 2 decades. We first met during our freshman year of high school and have been inseparable ever since. We shared many milestones, from losing our purity to each other to attending prom and even going to the same college after graduation. After finishing college, we got married and settled down to build our life together. Starting a family was always part of our plan, and when we secured good jobs, we decided to make that dream a reality. Fast forward 11 years, and we now have 2 kids, own our home, and are on a path to early retirement for travel and other experiences we've longed for. Everything seemed like a dream until tragedy struck. My sister-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was not just family, but also my wife's best friend. My wife supported her throughout her fight against the disease, but sadly, she eventually passed away. It was a devastating blow to our entire family, my wife especially. My sister-in-law was a beacon of light in our lives. My wife took it the hardest because they were incredibly close, sharing everything from shopping trips to personal secrets. I stood by my wife during her grief, helping her navigate through the toughest period of her life. After about 6 months, she started to recover. During her mourning, she read through her sister's journals and notebooks, trying to understand the emotions and provide support. What hit my wife deeply was the feeling that her sister hadn't accomplished enough in her life, taken too soon. Reading the journal entries made my wife realize her sister's unfulfilled aspirations. Motivated by her sister's untimely departure, my wife expressed a newfound determination to live life fully. She wanted to travel, experience skydiving, and savor every moment. I wholeheartedly supported this mindset, aligning with the reason I had been working 60 hours a week since college to retire early. In the coming weeks, my wife embraced this philosophy, taking pottery classes, teaching herself rock climbing, and even planning a bungee jumping adventure for her and our son. It seemed like she was fully embracing this new adventurous lifestyle. I didn't pay much attention to it. I felt happy for her as she was recovering from the loss of her sister. However, one evening after she returned from the climbing gym, her behavior seemed different. Before that, she had been enthusiastic and positive about embracing a new chapter in her life. After dinner, when the kids were in their rooms, she took me out to the patio. We shared a couple of glasses of wine and gazed at the stars. Towards the end of our conversation, she brought up the idea of both of us having a hall pass. For those unfamiliar, a hall pass in a committed monogamous relationship is a one-time opportunity for both partners to have closeness with someone outside the relationship. I was completely taken aback by her suggestion. It seemed to come out of nowhere. So I asked her why she was bringing it up. She reassured me that she loved me, but felt like she might be missing out on a part of life because she had only ever been with me. She tried to phrase it in a way that wouldn't hurt me, but it was impossible not to feel terrible when she said that. I expressed my lack of support for the idea. We had been married for 20 years, and I couldn't understand why it suddenly became an issue. I had no desire to be with anyone else, and I wasn't comfortable with her being with someone else either. We were about to go back inside, but I paused and asked her if there was someone she was interested in. She hesitated to tell me the truth, but after a few moments, she admitted that there was someone at the climbing gym she found attractive. She mentioned he had been flirty, and he recently invited her out for drinks. Although she assured me that she declined, and made it clear she was married. I went to bed that night feeling uneasy. It took a few days for me to come to terms with what she had suggested. I was deeply hurt, but eventually I forgave her, and we pretended the conversation never happened. About a week later, she told me about an outdoor climbing class offered by the gym, and she wanted to sign up for it. One Saturday, she left early in the morning for the class, or at least that's what I thought. Since our daughter had started lying about her whereabouts, we asked her to leave her location on Snapchat Maps for verification. That afternoon, when our daughter claimed she was going to a friend's house, I checked the maps. Everything seemed fine on our daughter's end, but I noticed my wife's avatar was in the heart of the city. I was a bit perplexed because I had been informed that she was heading to a park about 30 minutes outside of the city. Checking the location, I discovered she was at a bar. I tried to make sense of it, thinking she might be hanging out with people from the climbing gym after their climb. However, a sinking feeling in my gut couldn't be ignored, recalling what she had mentioned about a guy from her climbing gym inviting her for drinks. Wondering if she was there with him wasn't too much of a stretch. I was home alone, and the bar happened to be about a 15-minute walk from the house, so I took the dog for a walk, keeping an eye on the map. Upon reaching the bar, I peered through the windows and saw my wife sitting at a table with a man, leaning close and smiling as they chatted for 2 years. The man reached across the table, holding my wife's hand, and she allowed it. While hand-holding isn't necessarily cheating, it hinted at something more. I went home before my wife spotted me there and waited for her return. Throughout the wait, I was undecided on whether to confront her or investigate on my own. When she came home and, before saying anything to me, went straight to the shower, I tried to initiate a conversation, but she dismissed me, citing post-climbing sweat. This confirmed in my mind that something had happened while she was with that man. She had left her gym bag near our bed, and I noticed her phone was still inside. I pulled it out and searched for information about the man, checking her text messages. I found a chat with an unsaved number starting about a week before she asked me about the hall pass. Scanning through the messages for keywords indicating an affair, I found a few exchanged pictures and explicit messages. Then I saw plans for them to meet at the bar, even coming up with a lie to tell me and his partner. I had no idea who the guy was, but I discovered him by checking the climbing gym's social media, where he was clearly featured in some pictures. He was tagged in everything, and through some digging, I learned he was married with a newborn baby. I was disgusted by what I discovered. Hurt doesn't even begin to describe the pain I felt. I had been with my wife for 20 years, and she was willing to throw all of that away because she wanted to be with another man. I was furious and utterly disgusted by the reprehensible actions of both of them. At the end of their message chain, there was the name of a restaurant, along with a date and time. A week had passed since I found out my wife was cheating on me, and I devised a plan to catch her in the act. While contemplating it, I realized that the wife of her affair partner deserved to know as well. On the day of the planned meeting, I sent a dozen roses to the partner's wife, including details about the restaurant on the card. I hoped it would make her believe he had a surprise for her. Waiting outside the restaurant, I observed her heading in. I followed her inside, and we both noticed our partners holding hands simultaneously. She hurried over, started yelling at him in front of everyone. My wife was surprised to see me, but she quickly got up, insisting it wasn't what it seemed. I asked her to explain the text messages, and she fell silent. I informed her that I was ending our relationship and that she could expect to see me in court. We spent the next 8 months in a divorce battle, mainly over custody. Both of us wanted primary custody, but we ended up with joint custody. I kept the house, and she received no spousal payments. Her affair partner, also divorced, had to pay child support and alimony to his ex. My ex-wife and I recently finalized the divorce proceedings, and we are finally done with each other. I honestly don't know how to move forward. Having only been with one woman and feeling betrayed, I'm unsure about the next steps. My girlfriend and I were together for 3 years before everything fell apart. I believed she was the one and planned to marry her, but she cheated on me with my cousin. It all began when we met at a nightclub 3 years ago. She was the hottest woman there, and I didn't think I had a chance, but I tried anyway. Surprisingly, she was interested, and we've been together since. She moved into my apartment a year and a half into our relationship, and I didn't question it because I was deeply in love. Then, my cousin, who used to live down south, got a job in New York. I helped him get an apartment in my building, excited to have family close by. We were good friends, often playing games online. I thought it would be nice having family nearby once he settled in, and we hung out quite often. He never hid that he found my girlfriend attractive, but I never thought he'd act on his feelings. I never noticed anything going on between them while I was around. They respected each other's space. A few months after he moved in, I was grabbing coffee with a friend, and my cousin showed up with his new girlfriend, who happened to be my girlfriend's work friend. We tried to set them up at a party, but it didn't seem to be going well. They were keeping things low profile, not wanting to pressure their relationship. Finding it amusing, I wanted to surprise my girlfriend with the news. I texted her to come to the cafe for a surprise, but she replied that she couldn't because she was hanging out with her friend. Ironically, the friend she claimed to be with was sitting across from me at the cafe. She lied about her whereabouts, and I, in turn, lied to my friends about her having a migraine. When I got home, she was nowhere to be seen. However, I noticed makeup on the bed, and she had clearly tried on a couple of outfits. I felt really nervous, thinking something was going on that I didn't know about, and I needed to talk to someone. I walked down the hall to chat with my cousin. Despite loud music playing in the background, I knocked on the door persistently until he heard me. After some shuffling, he opened the door, trying to dismiss it by saying he had company and would come over later. Once again, I had no reason to believe my girlfriend was cheating on me with my cousin, so I didn't assume it was her in there. It only dawned on me when I saw a shirt I bought her for her birthday on the arm of the couch behind my cousin. I played it cool, nodded my head, and returned to my apartment immediately. Once there, I searched for any other signs of cheating. Eventually, I went into her laptop, checking her Facebook messages with my cousin. Doing that completely shattered my heart. In the messages, my cousin asked her what she liked about me. She mentioned finding me funny with a good personality, but he insisted I wasn't her type, claiming he was. My girlfriend didn't disagree. They were extremely flirty, and at one point, she messaged him the classic "just got out of the shower" message. After that, they exchanged suggestive pictures with very explicit messages. Earlier that day, my cousin had messaged her, expressing his inability to stop thinking about her and his need to be with her. He instructed her to come up with an excuse to visit his apartment, and she did. Realizing it was over between my girlfriend and me, I decided to cut my cousin off entirely from my life, leaving no trace for everyone I knew. I captured screenshots of everything I saw, sending them to myself just in case my girlfriend attempted to lie. Fortunately, my name was on the lease, and hers wasn't since she moved into my apartment. This meant I could at least kick her out. When she came home a few hours later, I immediately told her to leave. Confused, she asked why, and I revealed that I had discovered her involvement with my cousin. I insisted she vacate the apartment or face legal action. I left for the night, giving her a 48-hour notice to leave. During my absence, both she and my cousin called me numerous times, but I ignored every call. Meanwhile, I gathered all my relatives in a group chat and disclosed everything about the situation. Everyone, including my cousin's parents, expressed deep disappointment and offered apologies, though they weren't directly involved. I received several messages from my cousin, calling me a coward and claiming family members labeled him a pig. I didn't care. He was, indeed, a pig. Since my girlfriend and I shared many friends, I created a group chat and informed them of the incident. They were shocked and firmly sided with me. Some girls in the chat revealed that my girlfriend had tried to call them seeking a place to stay. Despite feeling bad, they declined, as they didn't believe her actions were justified. Returning 2 days later, I found my girlfriend had left the apartment. Unsure of her whereabouts, I discovered that she stayed with my cousin. However, their personalities clashed, and he kicked her out after a week. After that, I lost track of where she went. I guess I learned that you really can't put your trust in just anyone, not even family. I'm Jason, and I had a 5-year relationship with my ex-girlfriend Bella. We met at a unisex salon where she worked as a hairdresser, and we hit it off from the start. Although I liked her initially, I never expected our connection to grow into a deep love. After several visits to the salon, I gathered the courage to ask for her number. and she agreed since we were already familiar with each other. The typical story unfolded. We went out, got to know each other, and eventually fell in love. Our decision to not rush into settling down early stemmed from my past heartbreak with an ex-girlfriend. I wanted to take things slow with Bella. After 5 years of dating, I felt it was time to make our commitment official. 2 months before the wedding, Bella surprised me with the news that she was pregnant. While it wasn't part of our original plan, I welcomed it as a blessing. Initially, Bella and I had agreed to wait 3 to 4 years after marriage to have a child. She had experienced 2 feticides in the past, and I wanted to avoid that for her. Despite the unexpected joy of impending parenthood, planning a wedding and expecting a child simultaneously wasn't easy. Bella insisted on the grand wedding she had always dreamed of, with an expensive venue, gown, and other costly elements. While she had saved money for the wedding, I thought it made more sense to allocate our budget towards securing a home for our growing family and addressing other essential needs. However, she believed in making our wedding a once-in-a-lifetime event, arguing that we had many years ahead to focus on our child. After considering her perspective, we proceeded with the wedding she envisioned. We booked the venue, paid for the cake she desired, and she covered expenses like her gown, hairdo, and other necessities with her bridesmaids. Despite my internal reservations, I was genuinely excited about the upcoming events. I was about to marry the woman I loved, and I was thrilled that, in our 5 years of dating, she had never betrayed my trust. I thought she was a faithful partner who would stay true to me as we aged together. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. I delved too deeply into the future while my present was already a mess. Unbeknownst to me, as I smoothly planned our wedding, investing my savings to create her dream ceremony, Bella was cheating on me with someone close. I wouldn't have discovered this if her jealous lover hadn't confessed the night before our wedding. That evening, as I returned home early to prepare for my bachelor's party, my best man called, requesting a meeting to share something important. We agreed to meet at a nearby coffee shop. When we sat down, he looked uneasy, apologized in advance, and said he needed to get something off his chest. I feared he might cancel on me the night before my wedding, but what he revealed was worse. He disclosed his history with Bella, claiming he loved her too much to witness our marriage. At first, I thought it was a prank, searching for hidden cameras or friends recording us. However, he showed me a sensual picture of him and Bella, and my heart sank. He also shared a text from Bella about sneaking into her hotel room later that night for our wedding. Seeing that message dispelled all my doubts, and I tried to contain my hurt as a man, but tears welled up. The revelations continued. He admitted to being responsible for Bella's pregnancy. They planned for her to tell me it was mine, avoiding suspicion and preventing a breakup. At that moment, my world seemed to come to a standstill. Countless thoughts raced through my mind, making it tough to accept that the woman I loved and held high expectations for in our relationship was carrying my best man's child. I was furious, imagining if my anger were visible, my best man would have seen smoke. When I'd heard enough, I exploded in anger, throwing the chair I sat on and storming out. Trying to control my rage, I punched him when he followed and grabbed my arm. Then I drove off. In my car, I called the wedding venue to cancel, managing to get home without crossing any limits. Once there, I cried intensely, devastated by Bella's treacherous betrayal. While still mourning, she called about canceling the venue, and from my voice, she sensed my distress. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her I knew everything, officially calling off the wedding. It took her a moment to grasp, and as she realized I was aware, she cried and begged over the phone all night. Despite my insistence that I wanted nothing to do with her, she kept calling. I avoided sleeping at home, expecting her attempts to beg in person. She even suggested we still get married and sort things out afterward, fearing the shame of a last-minute cancellation, especially after boasting to her friends. Our wedding never happened, and I can't forgive her for what she did. All my efforts and sacrifices of 5 years vanished. I yearn for legal recourse for heartbreaks and infidelity, wishing to drag her to court to make her pay for the wasted years and pain she caused. We haven't seen each other, and she lacked the courage to face me after I called off the wedding. I moved into the house I rented for us as a surprise, healing and moving forward daily. Surprisingly, my former close friend and best man tried to apologize and explain their affair, but I wasn't interested. I told him we could no longer be friends, and he had no place in my life. Since then, we haven't made contact, and I'll never speak to him again, considering it childish. But I don't care. Bella didn't keep his child. She aborted it as payback, and they are no longer together. I've learned my lesson, and won't love deeply again. At times, I wish I had invested my resources and sacrifices in my life, a far better use than wasting them on a promiscuous woman. But as they say, where there is life, there is hope.
Story 4.
Reflecting on the past, I recall how hopeful and joyful my life once was. Sherry and I were college sweethearts, bound by shared dreams and an effortless bond. We met through a mutual friend, and from that first encounter, I was enchanted by her laughter and the way she viewed the world with eyes full of wonder. She wasn't a conventional beauty sung about in songs, but she was mine, and I adored her for every reason that mattered. Our first home was a modest condo in Van Nuys where we began building our life. Days turned into years filled with plans, late-night conversations, and mornings brightened by the laughter of our children, Shelby and Ryan. Years went by, and as our careers advanced, Sherry becoming a successful real estate agent and me working as an electronics engineer, we settled into a comfortable life, believing our marriage was solid. At least, that's what I thought. The everyday routine of work, family dinners, and Saturday park visits created an illusion of stability. Yet, hidden within those moments, cracks formed, unseen and silent. Now I see that I was too blind, too trusting, wrapped in the certainty of a love I thought could never break. The signs were ready by the front door, carefully crafted over the past 2 days. Each one bore words I knew would change my life forever. I climbed the stairs, heart heavy but determined, and went into the master bedroom. I pulled back the sheets and pushed the king-size mattress off the frame, maneuvering it down the stairs, through the hallway, and finally out to the lawn. I paused, caught my breath, and went back for more. I returned to the house, went upstairs, tossed the bedding down the stairs, and took it outside, placing it in a pile next to the mattress. I glanced at the clock. 4:22. I needed to hurry and finish by 5. I took apart the bed, carried it outside piece by piece, and by 4:35, the bed was reassembled on the lawn. Next was the kitchen table. Light enough to carry, I turned it sideways and walked it out the door, placing it beside the bed on the lawn. The last item was a 6x8 rug from the living room. I rolled it up and set it alongside the other items, arranged the signs, and noted with pride that it was only 4:55. Just 10 minutes left before Sherry would be home. I walked to the middle of the street and turned to admire my work. It looked striking enough to bring tears to my eyes. My wife's bed and our marital bed, the kitchen table, and the rug. 3 places where I knew, without a doubt, she and her lover had been intimate over the past 6 months. The signs were posted high, out of reach, and one by one I read them. A large sign in front of the items said, "These belongings are yours for free. They are no longer needed in this house. If you can tolerate the stench of infidelity and broken promises, take them." The sign above the bed read, "On this bed, my wife repeatedly broke her wedding vows by being with her lover twice a week for the past 6 months. Today was their last meeting." The kitchen table bore a sign stating, "My wife and her lover often spent time here, usually just hours before she served me dinner." Above the rug hung a sign. Each sign was paired with a 17x24 photograph of Sherry and her lover in action, taken on the respective pieces of furniture. The 5th sign, posted behind the table, read, "My wife's lover is her boss, Greg Allen of Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty. He is married and has 3 children. His wife doesn't know yet, but she will soon." 4:57, right on time. She would be home any minute. I glanced around and saw that a crowd of neighbors had already gathered, curious about what I was doing. A few cars had stopped and people were on their phones, either inviting friends to watch or calling the police on me for public indecency. I waved casually and stepped back inside, shutting the door. At exactly 5:05 p.m., I saw Sherry's car turn the corner and slow as she approached our house. Seeing the crowd gathered and looking at our yard, she pulled up in front of the home we had shared for 10 years and stared at the items and the signs, her eyes locking onto the large photos of her and Greg Allen. Even through the car window, the noise of the crowd and the window of my house, I heard her scream, "No! Oh God, no!" Her gaze shifted from the signs to the front window, where she saw me. We stared at each other. Her face was pale and heartbroken. tears streaming down her cheeks as if asking, "Why?" I had the same question for her. After a moment, I turned away and drew the curtains. My name is Jack Meyer, and I should explain how Sherry and I ended up in this tragic situation. We met in college during my freshman year, introduced by a mutual friend. From the first meeting, I was captivated. Sherry wasn't classically beautiful, but she was charming and hot. 5 feet 2 inches tall, with striking blue eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair. Her petite frame was perfectly proportioned, with ample curves and a slim waist that drew me in. She didn't know it then, but I had already decided I couldn't imagine not being with her. Sherry and I began dating, and within weeks, we became a couple. A month after we met, we made love for the first time, and it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I was infatuated with Sherry and couldn't get enough of her. Neither of us were maids, but our experiences were limited, and we delighted in exploring each other. I can confidently say we were as in love as two people could be. We married right after high school and moved into our first home, a condo in Van Nuys. Sherry earned her real estate license and started working at one of the top agencies in the area. I used my engineering degree to secure a good job at an electronics company, and we settled into what I thought was an ideal life. For the next 13 years, we lived a wonderful life together. We first lived in our apartment, and as our income grew, we bought our dream house and expanded our family. Our daughter Shelby came first, now 8 years old. 2 years later, our son Ryan was born, now 6 years old. Sherry and I adored them both. We lived for each other and our family. So what went wrong? Sadly, I can't say. I wish I could claim I noticed subtle signs that hinted at trouble, but I didn't. I was completely blind and content, living in a world of unwavering love and trust in my wife. It took a fortunate accident to bring me back to reality, an accident involving our daughter Shelby getting sick at school. It was Thursday, just before noon, when the school nurse called to inform me that Shelby had come down with flu-like symptoms. I was in the middle of a staff meeting and asked the nurse to call my wife. The nurse told me she had tried calling Sherry at her office, but was informed that Sherry would be out for most of the day. She called our house, but there was no answer, so she left a message on Sherry's cell phone, only for it to go to voicemail. The nurse reached out to me because Shelby needed to be picked up as soon as possible. I apologized to my colleagues and rushed to Shelby's school to pick her up and take her home. When we arrived and I opened the garage door, I was startled to see an unfamiliar car parked in my spot next to Sherry's car. A lump formed in my throat and my stomach twisted. No, this can't be happening, I thought. The idea of my wife, the woman I cherished more than anything, having an affair seemed impossible. Yet the strange car in the garage suggested otherwise. Something was terribly wrong and I needed answers. I couldn't let Shelby see any of this. "Stay in the car for a moment, Shelby." "Why? I want to sleep," she complained. "I know, sweetie, but I think there's an exterminator inside spraying for bugs. The spray could make you feel worse," I lied. My first lie to her. "Let me check and I'll come get you." Shelby whined a bit more, but lay back in the back seat to wait. I opened the door to the kitchen as quietly as possible, hoping to find Sherry and a friend enjoying coffee and conversation. But when I turned the corner, the kitchen was empty. I walked through the kitchen to the living room, hoping she was on the couch chatting, but no one was there either. Then I heard her laugh, a light, familiar laugh I knew well. It came from upstairs, and my heart dropped. The only rooms up there were the bedrooms. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move forward. I needed to know, no matter how bad it was. I crept up the stairs, the carpet muffling my footsteps. The first room I passed was Shelby's, its door open and bed made. The next was Ryan's room, with the door closed. I moved past it when I heard Sherry's laugh again, coming from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. With my heart pounding, I stopped at the doorway and listened. At first, there was only silence. Then I heard the rhythmic sound of the bed softly hitting the wall, followed by Sherry's voice.
"Oh God, Greg, so good. Yes, baby. Be my man."
Greg's voice came next, low and breathless. "It's nice, isn't it, Sherry?"
"Yes, Greg, you know it is. The best ever," she replied. "I've told you that countless times. Even my pathetic husband, Jack."
Greg let out a rough laugh.
"Even him?"
Sherry's tone shifted, a hint of defensiveness creeping in.
"Don't call Jack weak, Greg. He isn't. He just can't make me feel the way you do. He loves me and tries so hard, but every time he touches me, I think of you, filling me, completing me like no one else."
My body went cold. My wife couldn't stand the way I made love to her. I needed to see, yet I didn't want to be seen. I knew my marriage was over, but needed visual proof. Heart shattered, I pushed the door open an inch to peek inside. What I saw destroyed the last bit of love I had for her. The man beside her was Greg Allen, her boss. My first impulse was to rush in and strike him senseless, but I knew that would land me in jail. After all, he hadn't forced my wife. She had willingly and enthusiastically given herself to him. Somehow, I managed to make it to the car, closed the garage door, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. "Dad, where are we going?" "I feel bad. I just want to go to bed," Shelby said. "I know, Shelby, but I was right. Whatever is going on in the house will only make you feel worse. I was only inside for a minute, and I don't feel well either." Not wanting to tell her the truth, but also not wanting to lie, I added, "I'll take you to Grandma's for a while, until things settle down." The drive to my mom's house took 15 minutes, and my mind raced the entire way. My marriage was over, finished, beyond any chance of saving. There was no way I could stay with the woman I'd just seen moments ago, tangled up with her lover in my bed. My bed. What a betrayal. I hit the steering wheel with my fist as tears slid down my face. "Dad, what's wrong?" Shelby asked. "It's okay, Shelby, I'm fine. Don't worry about it," I said, trying to sound calm. I left Shelby with my mom, saying I'd be back in a couple of hours. I didn't share anything about what I'd seen. I just told her to watch Shelby until I got back from work. Part of me wanted to storm back home and confront them, but I realized I needed more than just a confrontation. I needed a plan for revenge. Driving back to my office, I started forming a strategy to bring my wife and her boss down. The electronics company I worked for had multiple divisions. When I reached my office, I instructed my secretary, "Please, no interruptions for the rest of the day." I then called Dan Taylor, my longtime friend from college and a colleague in the security department. He arrived 20 minutes later. "Hey, Jack, what's going on?" Dan asked as he stepped in. "Close the door," I said. Dan's eyes narrowed as he shut the door behind him. "You look like you've just lost your best friend." "It's worse than that, Dan. I need your help." "Anything, Jack. What happened?" he said, concern evident in his voice. I took a deep breath before answering. "I caught my wife and her boss having sex in my house, in my bed," I said, my voice trembling. Dan's eyes widened. "Damn, Jack, are you serious?" "I wish I wasn't," I replied. "I went to pick up my daughter from school, and when I got home, there was an unfamiliar car in the garage. I snuck in and found them together. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but it was real." "Damn, that's rough," Dan said, shaking his head. "Did you confront them?" "No, I wanted to, but I couldn't risk Shelby seeing anything. She was in the car waiting for me, so I left quietly and took her to my mom's." Dan leaned forward. "So, what's your plan now?" "I'm not sure yet, but I need evidence. I need video and audio proof if this happens again. That's where you come in." Dan's expression turned serious. "You want cameras and microphones?" "Yes," I said, "something small enough to hide in a few rooms to capture everything." Dan paused, considering it. "I can help with that. But how do you know they'll do it again?" "Maybe this was just a one-time thing." "No, Dan, they talked about meeting regularly like this for the past 6 months. I don't know if it's always been at my house, but I'd bet on it. Hotels will leave a paper trail they can't afford, and Sherry is home during the day while I'm at work and the kids are at school." We discussed it further before moving on to logistics. Dan mentioned he had access to a new beta line of miniature wireless cameras and microphones that could connect to my laptop or home computer. He also had a small voice recorder that could be placed under Sherry's car seat to catch any conversation she might have while driving. It would only capture her side of the conversation, but that was better than nothing. I thanked him and agreed to pick everything up the next day. Coming home that night was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. The thought of facing Sherry and pretending everything was normal felt impossible. I decided my best course was to act as if I felt unwell, which wasn't far from the truth. After picking up Shelby from my mom's house, we returned home, where I found Sherry in the kitchen making dinner. Her expression shifted to anger the moment she saw Shelby. "Where have you been? Why didn't you call me to tell me Shelby was sick? I just got a message from the school nurse," Sherry said, her voice laced with irritation. I kept my tone steady. "The school tried calling you, Sherry, but you weren't available. They called your office and were told you were out. They left a message on the home phone and even tried your cell, but it went straight to voicemail." Sherry's eyes widened with realization. "Oh my God. I must have accidentally turned it off when I was showing it to a client at home. I didn't have a free moment all day." Yes, I'm sure, I thought, watching her with a cold gaze. Too busy for your daughter. Sherry hugged Shelby and apologized, then helped her into bed. Despite everything, Sherry genuinely loved our kids. It was me who seemed to block her happiness, but that was going to change, and soon. After putting Shelby to bed, Sherry went back to the kitchen to make soup for her and finish preparing dinner for us all. I don't feel great either, I told her. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, just in case I'm contagious. Sherry came over and placed her hand on my forehead. You do seem clammy, dear, and you look pale. Yes, I thought, pale and clammy. Exactly what happens when you catch your wife with another man in your bed. I didn't respond, just turned and walked upstairs. I went to the master bedroom first. I didn't want to go in, but I needed my shaving kit, toothbrush, and clothes for work the next day. Forcing myself inside, I noticed the window was open, the scent of Zex was gone, and the bed was made. She must have changed the sheets. The sight nearly shattered me. Rage surged, but I held it back. I needed to stay calm until I could bring down my full response. And I would. I collected my things and moved to the guest room, closing the door behind me. I stripped down to my underwear and got into bed. My body felt stiff and numb. I wanted to cry, but willed myself not to. I had a plan to execute and couldn't let emotions get in the way. I lay in the darkness for hours, unable to sleep. After feeding and putting the kids to bed, Sherry came in. I pretended to be asleep as she touched my forehead and left, softly closing the door. Sherry usually took the kids to school, so I woke up early, showered, and left before she woke. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed to get away from what I once believed was a marriage built on loyalty, honesty, and commitment. How blind I had been. How devastatingly wrong. At work, I arrived before anyone else, brewed coffee, and started organizing my next steps. I knew I needed to cancel our shared credit cards, transfer half of our joint accounts into one under my name, and update the beneficiaries on my will, life insurance, and 401k to include only Shelby and Ryan. It seemed simple to undo 13 years of life, yet it felt monumental. I also needed to find a divorce attorney to avoid being taken advantage of by Sherry. This was a no-fault divorce state, so her infidelity wouldn't affect the financial settlement. But it could help me secure custody of my kids. Sherry had shown how little I meant to her, but she was a good mother, and I didn't want to take the children away. I just wanted joint custody to remain a significant part of their lives. I pushed thoughts of her betrayal and the degrading words she'd said to her lover out of my mind. They could tear apart my confidence if I let them. I couldn't afford that. After finalizing my checklist, I called Dan's office. He assured me everything would be ready by noon, and even offered to help install the equipment and show me how to use it. I tried to concentrate on my work, but my phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sherry. I paused before answering. "Hi, baby. How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice soft and concerned. "My stomach still hurts a bit," I replied. "I was worried about you. You left so early this morning before I could check on you," she said. "Yes," I responded evenly. "I had a lot to get done and not much time, so I headed in early. Please, Jack, take care of yourself. I don't know what I'd do if anything happened to you. You, Shelby, and Ryan are my whole world," she said. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "You have a funny way of showing it," I thought. Out loud, I said, "I'll be fine. If you're up for it tonight, I know a way to help you feel better," she added with a playful tone. The fact that I once believed in her empty words turned my stomach. "We'll see how I feel," I replied, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Wow, you really must be sick to sound so indifferent," she joked lightly. "Sherry, I just have a lot on my mind. I'll see you tonight." "Okay, honey. Call if you need anything. I'll be at the office all day," she said before hanging up. Good, I thought. Just what I needed to hear. I called Dan back and he confirmed everything was ready. By 3:30, we had installed and tested the cameras and microphones in the living room, kitchen, guest room, and the master bedroom, ensuring they captured clear audio and video. That night was one of the hardest of my life. I knew I couldn't fake being sick again. After dinner, once the kids were asleep, I followed Sherry to our bedroom. What happened next was far from love. It felt mechanical. Halfway through, Sherry whispered, "God, Jack, you make me feel so good. No one will ever love me the way you do." The bitter irony of her words almost made me choke. When it was over, I turned onto my side and feigned sleep. Sherry curled up behind me, her voice soft and uncertain. "Jack, I'm sorry if I didn't please you," she said. I responded flatly,
No, Sherry, you always do. Sometimes I just wonder if I'm enough for you. She sounded surprised. Jack, why would you say that? You know you're my everything. I couldn't live without you. You've always been my true love. I stared into the darkness, my voice hollow. Yes, but sometimes it's hard to believe. Her tone shifted to concern. Jack, what's wrong with you? Nothing, Sherry. Just tired, I replied. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Later, I heard Sherry crying quietly. I didn't feel any pity, just wondered if she felt guilty or was simply upset by how I was acting. The next morning, I woke up before she did and took the chance to place the voice recorder under the seat of her car. I checked the footage from the previous night. It was clear, even in low light. At breakfast, Sherry noticed my silence and frowned slightly. You said something last night that hurt my feelings, she said, though her expression softened as she leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Her mood lifted and she added brightly, I'll be showing houses today, but we'll pick up Shelby and Ryan after school. Good, I thought, keeping my expression neutral. Today's plans will lead her right into my setup. I handed her a cup of coffee. I'll be busy in my office all day, I said. As I headed toward the door, Sherry called after me. Jack, you forgot to say you love me. You know I need to hear it every morning. I paused briefly. Sorry, Sherry, I think you should already know how I feel. I've got a lot on my mind, I replied, then walked out without looking back. Okay, I'll let it slide this time. But don't forget, every woman needs to hear it, she teased. I won't, I said as I walked out. Someday I'd tell someone I loved them again, but not Sherry. Her mentioning her full schedule made me think she would probably spend time with the real love of her life. I hoped that was true. I was tired of pretending and wanted this nightmare to end. I spent the morning working at my office while watching the clock. Finally, around noon, I told my secretary I'd be out for a few hours and set my plan in motion. I borrowed the company van and parked across the street from my house, waiting. At about 1 p.m., Sherry pulled into the driveway. She opened the garage door, parked, and walked inside without closing the door, indicating she was either planning to leave again or waiting for someone. 10 minutes later, the car I had seen the day I first caught them arrived and pulled into the garage, taking my spot, just as he had taken my place in my wife's bed. I watched as he stepped out, and the garage door closed. I had to admit they were bold, meeting so openly in my home and in my bed. It only proved that they believed they'd never get caught, or they simply didn't care. Well, they were wrong on both counts. They were caught, and soon they'd care deeply. I would have the visual proof of their affair. For 13 years, I believed my wife would never cheat on me, just as I never would have betrayed her. Then doubt crept in. Was he really that much better? Why would she risk everything, our marriage and his, knowing I would tell his wife exactly what they were doing? I wanted so badly to storm inside and confront them. But why? I'd already caught them once without them knowing. Would confronting them make me feel better? Was it worth going to jail for attacking her lover? Neither of them was worth it. My only concern was how this would impact my kids, and his, since I planned to ruin him the way he ruined me. By 2:30, they were done. The garage door opened, and he backed out and drove away. 15 minutes later, Sherry did the same, closing the garage. I didn't waste time going through all the footage. I just needed to confirm the evidence was safely stored. In about 10 minutes, I'd seen enough. It wasn't an exact repeat of what I'd seen before, but was graphic enough. They started on the kitchen table, where I usually ate. They joked about how many times they'd done this, wondering if I'd ever realize I was eating where he had slept with her repeatedly. After that, they moved to the bedroom. Before they did, he suggested, "Why don't we try your daughter's room for a change of scenery?" Sherry snapped, "No way! It's bad enough I let you do this in my husband's space, but the kids' rooms are off limits." At least she had some boundaries, though none that protected me. In the bedroom, they undressed and spent the next 40 minutes together. I noticed that neither said they loved the other, but Sherry kept telling him he was the best lover she'd ever had. For the finale, they went to the living room rug by the fireplace. He dressed and left while she quickly showered and then left too. I found it odd that she didn't change the sheets, but assumed she planned to do so after picking up the kids, giving her enough time to clean and air out the room before I typically got home at 6. Knowing the evidence was safely stored on my hard drive, I turned off the system and left, not even bothering to check the condition of my ruined marriage bed. I had seen enough. Although I had hardened my heart against Sherry, I felt hollow inside, a pain that soon turned into seething anger and hatred.
I think I even smiled, knowing the chaos I was about to unleash on them. Back at work, I told Dan everything I had seen and heard. Like me, he couldn't comprehend how a supposedly loving wife like Sherry could do this. Not only had she broken our sacred vows, but she had gone out of her way to humiliate me, all while letting her lover know he was a better lover, a bigger man, the only one who could satisfy her. These thoughts plunged me into a deep pit of pain and despair. But I knew I needed to pull myself out of it to carry out my plan to destroy them both. I needed a strong divorce lawyer, and Dan suggested I contact the law firm our company used for recommendations. I reached out to one of the corporate lawyers I knew, who gave me the names of 3 divorce attorneys known for defending a husband's rights effectively. The first attorney I called was about to retire and not taking new clients, but the second one said he could see me the next day at 3 p.m. With that set, I moved on to canceling credit cards, changing beneficiaries, and transferring funds. When I got home that evening, Sherry was in the kitchen making dinner while the kids did their homework in their rooms. She wore a yellow sundress and looked beautiful. For a moment, my heart almost broke again. She smiled and seemed happy. I assumed it was her usual post-afternoon high. "Hey, baby, how's my man doing? I hope your day was as good as mine," she said, making my eyebrows lift slightly. "My day was interesting, not great, but I discovered some things I didn't know. What made your day so good?" I already knew why she was in such a good mood. "I made a sale," she said. "My first one this week, and I might close another deal on Thursday when I show more houses." "Sounds like a lucky day," I said, without enthusiasm. "Anything else special? Meet anyone interesting or important?" She gave me a strange look. "No, just another day of work so I can come home to my family. You know where my heart is." While changing, I noticed the sheets were freshly replaced and the room smelled recently aired out. A glistening patch of water on the shower floor caught my attention, so I brought it up when I returned to the kitchen. "Did you shower this afternoon?" I asked. Sherry flinched at the question and turned to face me, her expression tinged with guilt. "No, why would I? That's silly." "I don't know," I said, maintaining eye contact. "But there's water on the shower floor, and it never stays there for long." She looked away, fidgeting with the lettuce in her hands. "Oh, the drain must be clogged again." "Yeah, maybe," I replied, "but I cleared it a couple of weeks ago. Maybe someone's sneaking in to meet their lover and showering afterward." She froze for a moment, her back to me, head lowered, then resumed tearing lettuce leaves. "Jack, you have quite the imagination," she said, her voice tight. "Is it imagination or maybe intuition?" I asked, watching her closely. "Sometimes it feels like I can read minds." Sherry forced a laugh, turning briefly to meet my gaze. "Well, if you could read mine, you'd see how much I love you." I nodded, the tension thick between us. "I'll be in my office. Let me know when dinner's ready." She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes clouded with worry. Dinner was quiet, punctuated by only the occasional clink of cutlery. Sherry's eyes widened slightly when I sat in her usual seat, forcing her to take mine. "Jack, you always sit there. Why switch now?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "Sometimes a change of scenery is nice," I replied evenly. She gave me an odd look and barely ate, moving the food around on her plate. The kids kept the conversation going while Sherry and I mostly listened and made occasional comments. After dinner, we all helped clean up before I retreated to my office to work. I reviewed the footage and selected frames to print, using my Epson T3000 for large, high-quality images. I carefully chose the captions to accompany them. I had a plan. Meet with the lawyer to initiate the divorce, secure my finances, and wait for Sherry and her lover's next encounter. When I finally went to bed, Sherry was already there, either asleep or pretending. My behavior must have given her something to worry about, but it didn't matter. Nothing she could say or do would change my decision to divorce her. If anything, making her anxious was a small bonus. Today was Tuesday, and she had hinted about another sale on Thursday. I took that as a sign they'd meet again. Thursday would be the day I ended it all. The next morning, I was up early, showered, and out the door before Sherry woke up. I had a lot to accomplish. My appointment with the lawyer wasn't until 3 p.m., so I had plenty of time to handle all the financial tasks. First, I went to HR to change the beneficiary on my life insurance and 401k from Sherry to Shelby and Ryan. The woman assisting me gave me a few strange looks, but I didn't feel the need to explain my reasons. Next, I canceled all of our joint credit cards and applied for one in my name only. Then I went to the bank and transferred half of the funds from our joint checking and savings accounts to a new account in my name. I knew I needed to address the matter of our house. but decided to wait and discuss it with my lawyer, as I assumed the court would let Sherry stay there with the kids. At 3 p.m., I met with the lawyer, who seemed like a decent person. He warned me, "She'll likely get custody of Shelby and Ryan, and you'll probably have to give her the house and half of your assets, even with proof of her infidelity." "Write it up anyway," I said firmly. "You won't get away with taking everything," he responded. "Don't worry, I'm confident I can make her agree to my terms," I told him. He reluctantly agreed, saying, "Everything will be ready for her to be served Friday morning." I also asked him to prepare a lawsuit against her boss and his company for intentionally destroying my marriage. These papers would be ready for Friday morning as well. I was prepared. That evening, when I got home, I was distant toward Sherry. My plan was already in motion, and I just wanted this nightmare to be over so I could start fresh. Though I knew there was still pain ahead, there was no turning back, and I was determined to share that pain with Sherry and her lover. Dinner was quiet, with minimal conversation. Afterward, I retreated to my office, printed the incriminating photos, and labeled them without interruption. I wrote a letter to Greg Allen's wife, including the photos I'd printed and mentioning I had video evidence if she chose to divorce him. Around 11 p.m., I checked to make sure Sherry was asleep, retrieved the voice recorder from her car, and listened. Most of it was standard business calls, but one stood out. "Hello, darling. Thanks again for today. I miss you too, especially after we're together. Yes, a whole week together would be amazing. Maybe we can plan that soon for a real estate convention." Laughter. "Yeah, baby, Thursday afternoon. Can't wait. Bye, baby." Surprisingly, hearing this didn't sting as much as before. She had no idea she was about to become his sole responsibility. The thought of ending their affair brought me a sense of satisfaction. Revenge, I found, was powerful. I replaced the tape with a new one and put the recorder back, hoping it would capture her reaction when her world came crashing down. I barely slept that night, not from heartache, but from anticipation. When morning came, I stood watching Sherry, the woman I'd loved, the mother of my children, whom I once believed I'd grow old with. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized I'd spent my last night with her. Never again would we share intimate moments or dream about the future together. There was no future. As I turned away, I wondered if she knew the cost of her betrayal. She would soon. After showering, I left the house, had breakfast at a diner, and stopped by work to inform my secretary I'd be gone all day. I called Dan to update him. He wished me luck and asked for an update afterward. I then stopped by my lawyer's office to confirm everything was in place for Sherry and Greg Allen to be served the next day. After that, I called Sherry and told her I'd pick up the kids from school and take them to my mom's for the long weekend. Sherry sounded pleased and, with a flirtatious tone, said, "Saturday we'll have the whole day to ourselves in bed." "Sure," I replied, hanging up immediately. I couldn't stand to hear her lies any longer. I wasn't in a hurry to get home. By 12:30, I was parked around the corner, waiting for the events to unfold. Hidden from view, I had a clear line of sight to the driveway and didn't need to watch the garage door. At 12:50 p.m., Sherry pulled into the driveway, followed by Greg Allen 5 minutes later. I should have felt pain at the thought of them in my bed, but I felt nothing. I was surprisingly calm, imagining their actions like scenes from a cheap movie with a predictable plot, but a dramatic ending. By 2:50, Greg's car left and Sherry followed 10 minutes later. As soon as they left, I drove into the garage and shut the door. I had a lot to do and not much time to get it done. I went to my office to check the recording. Everything was captured, but at this point, I felt indifferent. After confirming the footage was securely downloaded to my hard drive, I spent 10 minutes bringing the explicit photo signs upstairs and placing them by the front door for easy access. Then I packed a toothbrush and clothes for Shelby and Ryan and loaded them into my car. My only regret was the pain I was about to cause the two kids I loved more than anything. But I reminded myself that this pain was not my doing. It was entirely on their mother. At 3:15, I picked up the kids as the final school bell rang and told them they'd be spending the weekend with Grandma. They were thrilled since she always spoiled them. 45 minutes later, I dropped them off and headed back home to set my plan in motion. This leads us back to where everything began. The bed, table, and rug laid out on the lawn with all the signs while the neighbors watched. Sherry arrived home horrified to discover that I knew everything. Sherry didn't contact me that evening, though I expected she might. The police came an hour after she left. They were sympathetic, but insisted I remove the signs and photos or face charges for disturbing the peace and obscenity. I took them down. They had served their purpose. Sherry saw them, and the look on her face told me her life was beginning to fall apart. I woke up Friday with a terrible hangover but felt strong. Though sad and lonely, I knew I had the resolve to channel my anger into completing my revenge on my unfaithful wife and her lover. By noon, I pulled back the curtains and saw that the carpet, kitchen table, and bed were gone. Only the mattress and stained sheets remained. I'll deal with those later, I thought. The morning passed uneventfully, but at 3 p.m., everything erupted. I was sure Greg Allen's wife had received the letter and photos earlier that day. My lawyer called to tell me Sherry, Greg, and his partners had been served at work. I was there when it happened, he said. Sherry screamed and collapsed, sobbing, while Greg stormed around the office calling you names and threatening you. Greg's partners, however, locked themselves in a room for 15 minutes, then emerged to hand Sherry her final paycheck, saying, "Your services are no longer needed." Greg was handed a check for his partnership share. When he protested, they cited the section of the company's charter regarding morality and relationships with employees, which allowed them to sever ties with him and Sherry. At the same time, the receptionist told Greg that his wife was on the phone, demanding to speak with him. She'd received the letter and photos and informed him not to come home, adding she would be filing for divorce the next day. I later learned from the husband of one of the agency's employees that after Greg was escorted out, everyone turned their backs on Sherry as she lay on the floor, sobbing for half an hour. At one point, she managed to gather herself and leave the building, though no one knew where she went. The next day, Sherry finally called me. Her voice was strained as she asked, "Where are the kids? Do they know?" "They're safe with my mother," I said. "They know nothing, and they won't hear any sordid details from me."
Thank you.
Sherry whispered. After a pause, she added, "Can I come by to collect some of my things?" "You can," I replied, "but let me know when so I can be out for a few hours while you gather what you need." "Could you stay and talk?" she asked, her voice wavering. "I have nothing to say," I said flatly. Sherry began to cry. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "You need to know that, Jack. I never meant to hurt you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "How can you tell me you're sorry, Sherry, and that you never meant to hurt me? What did you think I'd do when I found out? Applaud you too? I didn't want you to find out," she pleaded. "I love you, Jack. I've never loved anyone but you." "I don't think you believe that, Sherry," I said coldly. "How could you? After telling your lover he made you feel better than I ever could? That he was the only man who completed you?" "Jack, I never said that," she protested. "How could you think I would say those things?" "Because I have recordings, Sherry. Every word, every insult you threw at me in front of him, every degrading thing you said about me, your husband." Sherry fell silent. I continued, "I have nothing more to say to you, and there's nothing you can say to change how I feel." "I love you, Jack," she insisted. "You have to believe me. I've always loved only you. I don't know why I said those things to Greg. You have to understand, I didn't mean them. I was just trying to boost his ego because he always said his wife put him down." I shook my head, incredulous. "So let me get this straight. You belittled me and tore me down in front of him to build up his ego because you pitied him. Is that your story? You felt sorry that his wife humiliated him, so you humiliated me and slept with him for 6 months just to make him feel better?" "Yes, Jack," she admitted. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean any of it." "If that's true, why did you do it? It's shocking it took me this long to see how pathetic you are and how foolish I was." "Jack, I don't love him," she said desperately. "I love you. Please give me a chance to fix this. I'll prove it to you. This doesn't have to be the end. Let me show you. Please, Jack, don't leave me." "Sorry, Sherry," I said, my voice firm. "I don't love you anymore, and I didn't leave you. You left me. The things you did with him and the cruel things you said about me for 6 months show that you don't love me. You can't love someone and wish them that much pain and humiliation. You're disgusting, Sherry, and I can't wait for you to be out of my life. The only connection we'll have is the kids. Remember them? Shelby and Ryan, the children we created when we were a family. I'll do everything to spare them pain, but not you. I want you and Greg to feel every bit of the pain you caused me." "Why did you tell his wife?" she asked, her voice small. "It wasn't fair." I stared at her. "Are you serious, Sherry? What you did to me and our kids wasn't fair." "Why did I tell her?" "Because 1, he destroyed my family by sleeping with my wife. 2, he took what I thought was exclusively mine and made you tell him how amazing he was while you demeaned me. 3, his wife deserved to know who she was married to. What she does next is her choice. They have kids, Jack, she said weakly. So do I, Sherry, I replied, and I want to protect them. I feel sorry for his kids too, but if they face losing their father, that's on him. And you. I refuse to take any blame. I don't want a divorce, Jack. I'll fight for us, she said, a note of defiance in her voice. There's nothing left to fight for. I'd rather die than stay tied to you. I know you love me, Jack. You can't just stop loving me over one mistake, she said, almost pleading. You're out of your mind, I said. Did you read the divorce papers? No, why? If you just listen and let me make it right, there won't need to be a divorce. If not for me, do it for Shelby and Ryan, she said. They need both parents. They'll have both parents, I said coldly. We just won't be married or live together. If you had read the papers, you'd see that as long as you agree to join custody, you can stay in the house and have half of our assets. What's not in the papers, but what I'm telling you now, is that if you don't sign and accept these generous terms, I'll make sure everyone sees those videos, including your parents, sister, and anyone else I can think of. You wouldn't, Jack, she whispered. You can't hate me that much. You're wrong, Sherry, I said, my voice hardening. I do hate you, and nothing will stop me. Fight me, and I'll ruin your life forever. And yes, I hate you that much. Please, Jack, she sobbed. Don't do this. Sign the divorce papers, Sherry. Please, Jack, let me make it up to you, she begged. No, sign the papers. A defeated whisper came from her. Oh, God, just sign the papers. Sherry and I ended the call. She signed the divorce papers, and it was finalized 6 months later. She stayed in the house with Shelby and Ryan, while I moved into a condo a few blocks away. Since we remained in the same school district, the children's routines were minimally disrupted. Although both kids felt the pain of the divorce, Shelby told me that Sherry admitted she had made a huge mistake and that our marriage couldn't survive. We reassured the kids that we would always be there for them. I'm not sure what Sherry told her parents and sister about our split, but since they still talk to me, I doubt she blamed me. As for my mother, it was simply a situation that neither Sherry nor I could avoid. I had one last chance to retrieve the recorder from Sherry's car, and what I heard was unforgettable. On her way home, she called Greg to thank him for their great day, but mentioned that she thought I might be suspicious and suggested they lay low for a couple of weeks. When she arrived and saw the crowd in front of the house and the signs with the photos, her shocked screams nearly broke the recorder. As she left, she cried and said, "What did you do, Jack? What did you do?" Then, as the reality hit her like cold water, she changed to, "Oh God, what did I do? No, please, God, what have I done? Make this all go away." She managed to call Greg, and when he picked up, she shouted, "He knows, Greg! Jack knows everything about us!" After that, I cried for a long time. It's been over a year since everything fell apart, and I'm slowly piecing my life back together. I'm not dating and probably won't be for a while. The idea of going through something similar again makes me cautious about starting another serious relationship. Shelby told me that her mom went on one date but came home crying and, as far as she knows, hasn't dated since. Sherry now works as a secretary at a retirement village. I never found out if she kept in touch with Greg Allen, and I don't care. Greg Allen and his wife divorced, and he couldn't find a job. While I didn't send the videos to anyone, Sherry knew I didn't make it easy for Greg. Many companies are wary of hiring someone known for seducing married women and wrecking marriages. Although I blurred Sherry's face in the video, I kept the audio intact. I recently heard that Greg's ex-wife is dating a nice guy who's a police officer, and it seems serious. Good for her. As for Greg's former company, they made a generous offer to avoid any potential lawsuits. I accepted, and from what I know, that chapter is closed. Now my only focus is on my kids and their future. Maybe one day I'll care about my own future again, too. A year after the betrayal that turned my world upside down, life had found a sort of rhythm. It wasn't the life I had imagined, with mornings filled with laughter over breakfast, Shelby running around the house, and Ryan's giggles echoing up the stairs as Sherry joined me with a smile. Those moments were gone, distant memories held in my mind like relics from another time. Still, life moved on, even if it wasn't the version I once treasured. The first few months post-divorce were the toughest. The house felt suffocatingly quiet. Every room stood as a stark reminder of what had been lost. The bedroom I once shared with Sherry was stripped of anything personal. The photos, bedding, even the little trinkets she placed on the nightstand were all gone. I thought about redecorating to make the space my own, but the idea felt empty. Instead, I threw myself into work and spent as much time with Shelby and Ryan as possible. pouring myself into them to fill the void in my heart. Shelby had an unyielding inner light. At 9, she was perceptive beyond her years. Her questions often struck deep, making me confront emotions I wasn't ready for. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, she looked at me with those wide, searching eyes. "Dad, do you think people who hurt each other can ever be happy again?" The question made my chest tighten. I wanted to reassure her that everything would be okay, that time healed all, but I wasn't sure it was true. "I think people can try, Shelby. And sometimes trying is all we have," I finally said. She nodded as if she understood, though I wasn't sure I did. Ryan approached life differently. At 6, he was a whirlwind of energy, always searching for the next thing to capture his attention. But there were moments when his bravado cracked, and I'd catch him looking at old photos or sitting quietly by the window, deep in thought. When I found him like that, I'd sit with him, saying nothing, just being there. Eventually, he'd look up and give me a small smile, and I'd know that in our silent way, we were holding each other up. Sherry and I reached a kind of truce, an uneasy balance where communication was brief and practical, focused solely on the kids. There were no arguments, no accusations, just an unspoken agreement to keep our emotions buried, at least outwardly. The first time I saw her after the fallout with Greg, her eyes were swollen, and she avoided my gaze. She was a different version of the woman I had once loved, moving carefully, as if one wrong move would shatter everything again. Through it all, Sherry's love for Shelby and Ryan remained steadfast. She was present at every school event, every parent-teacher meeting, clearly trying to make up for her mistakes in the only way she knew how. One day, after a school play, she came up to me as the kids ran to join their friends. "Jack, thank you for still letting me be part of this." Her voice was barely a whisper, and her hands trembled. "It's for them," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. The pain in her eyes was obvious, but I didn't feel triumph, just emptiness. Work became my refuge. Projects that once seemed routine took on new meaning. I buried myself in them, spending late nights at the office, not because I needed to, but because I had to. Dan, a friend and colleague, became my sounding board. He never pushed for details unless I shared them. Sometimes he'd come by with a beer, and we'd sit in silence, the understanding between us stronger than any words. Things changed when Ryan's soccer team needed a coach. The old me would have said no, citing work or exhaustion. But when Ryan asked, eyes bright with excitement, I couldn't refuse. The practices were chaotic at first, full of shouted directions and straight kicks, but soon they became the best part of my week. Shelby would join us on the sidelines, her voice rising above the noise as she cheered for her brother, a reminder that joy still existed, however brief. One evening after practice, Shelby came up to me with a thoughtful expression. "You're happier now, Dad," she said, more a statement than a question. I nodded, feeling a tightness in my throat. "I think I am," I said, surprised by the realization. She smiled and took my hand, and in that moment, I knew we would be okay. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. Sherry moved out in the fall, finding an apartment nearby so Shelby and Ryan could easily go between our homes. The first time I dropped them off, the goodbye was quick. I watched as they ran to her, their laughter echoing in the hallway. Sherry stood at the doorway, her eyes meeting mine for just a moment. "Thank you, Jack," she said, and for the first time in a while, her voice sounded genuine. I nodded and turned away before the old wounds could resurface. The emptiness in the house was both a relief and a reminder. Nights were the hardest, with the silence pressing down on me. On those nights, I'd go through old family albums, letting the memories wash over me, not in grief, but as a way to honor what once was. It hurt, yes, but it was also healing. I learned to find peace not in forgetting, but in accepting. Sherry's life changed too. From what I gathered, she had taken a job as a secretary at a local retirement home. It was a big change from her previous life, but it seemed to suit her. Shelby once mentioned that her mom had gone on a date but came home in tears. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a hint of sympathy, a reminder that life was complicated, and even those who hurt us could feel pain and regret. Greg Allen, the man who disrupted my marriage, was a different story. Word got around that he struggled to find work, his reputation trailing him like a dark shadow. The letter and photos I had sent to his wife did their job, unraveling his carefully built life. His divorce was swift and public, and he soon faded into obscurity. It wasn't revenge that brought me satisfaction, but a sense of justice, the realization that actions have consequences. There were small wins in this new chapter. Shelby won her first school spelling bee, and Ryan scored his first soccer goal, running into my arms afterward, beaming with pride. These moments reminded me that while I couldn't change the past, the future was still ours to shape. I started focusing more on myself, getting back into running and reconnecting with old friends. The grief of betrayal lingered, but it had softened into a manageable ache, a whisper instead of a shout. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Sherry called me. It was a short conversation, a request for help with Ryan's math homework. It was the first time we spoke without the weight of the past hanging over us. After we hung up, I sat there, feeling a mix of emotions. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acceptance. As spring turned to summer, I realized I was no longer the man who once trusted blindly. I was more cautious, but also stronger and more present. The scars Sherry left were part of me, but they no longer defined me. I wasn't ready for a new relationship, but the idea didn't make me flinch anymore. I believed that one day love could be possible again, built on lessons learned and trust restored. The kids adjusted, moving between their two homes with a resilience that inspired me. Shelby would sometimes ask about the before time, as she called it, and I'd share stories not as fairy tales, but with all their complexity. Ryan rarely asked, but he'd sometimes come to my bed at night without a word. I'd hold him close, knowing that in those silent moments, we were healing together. Life after betrayal was not what I expected. It was raw, messy, and full of moments that tested me to my core. But it was also full of growth, small victories that reminded me why I kept moving forward. I learned that forgiveness wasn't for Sherry or Greg. It was for me, a way to release the past so I could walk freely into the future. Today, as I watch Shelby practice her dance routine and Ryan play soccer with his friends, I know that this is what truly matters. The past is always there, a quiet witness to where I've been, but it's not where I live. I live here, in the laughter of my children, in the warmth of a sunny afternoon, in the steady, unbroken rhythm of my own heart, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough.